Then may I have your attention, please? The show starts in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
The following is a world-class Bullshitters exclusive.
Folks, it's Tuesday night. Welcome to the High Council here on World Class Bullshitters. I'm your host, Jeff Hicks, and with me tonight is my co-host, Caffeinated Wolf.
I am back, bitches. What is going on, Jeff? What is going on, chat? Hail to you all, and hail to the High Motherfucking Council.
It's good to have you back, man. We kept the seat warm for you.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it's all nice and cozy.
And we're joined by my personal favorite guest to have on the show. You know him, you love him. Say hello to Script Doctor.
Thanks so much to inviting me on. I feel honored to be here, especially given the topic at hand, one of my favorites to discuss, as always.
It's a big day, folks. Today they announced the new Superman, the new Lois Lane. We finally have our first look at the direction of this new DC universe as the old one is falling apart miserably. So we're going to be talking about that and a whole lot more. But I want to give a quick shout out to everyone in the chat. Hail to Darth Wacko. That's a cool name. Hello to James Unchange, Darian217, Asato Fortune. Thanks for being a member of the channel, as well as Shrubbles08. We appreciate both you guys. Hello to Clone Geek, Daryl Glass, Garth Vader, and a whole lot more. Like I said, folks, if we said hey to everybody, it would be Good Morning Pop Culture, and you can catch that tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. Now, before we start today's show, I do want to read our word of the day from our friend Shrubbles08 so everyone in the chat can play along at home. The word of the day is crabs. Debbie does crabs. Star Wars, The Rise of Ray's Crabs. Ugh. Fistful of crabs. Superman versus Super Crabs. Dawn of Fanny and Krabby Galore. Oh, God. I like those titles. Folks, if you can give us a better crab title, please do in the chat.
Band of Crabs.
The Crabs Who Loved Me.
Oh. Saving Private's Crabs.
Forest Crabs.
12 Angry Crabs. What else is there? Oh my God.
Not
X-Men
another crab
Crabs
movie.
of Future Past.
Not another crab story.
West Side Crabs.
West Side Crabs.
Could you just imagine them fucking, snapping their their claws and singing "When you're a crab, you're a crab"?
Yeah. Oh man, I'm thinking like singing in the rain, but singing in the crabs.
Now, are they crabs singing in the rain, or is it Debbie Reynolds getting pelted with a rainfall of crabs?
I think Debbie Reynolds would prefer for being pelted with a bunch of raining crabs on her, because she was a very funny funny actress, down for everything.
Carrie Fisher was too, so it rubbed off. But folks, I'm looking at all the crab titles: Crab Invasion, Dude, Where's My Crabs? That's a good one. Rush Crabs.
Dude, Where's My Crabs? That's my favorite one so far.
I would wear that on a t-shirt. I definitely would. So, folks, let's thank Shrubbles08 for our word of the day. And let's get some images pulled up here real quick, because today is a red letter date in the history of pop culture. Another Superman has been cast. Now, some of our listeners have been around since the days of Christopher Reeve. Some, maybe even back in the day of George Reeves. If we have any George Reeves listeners out there, let me know in the chat. Tell me how much you get for Social Security. But
because I won't see any.
Yeah, not
no, they've been saying that for every generation for the last 60 years.
I mean, I hope they're wrong. I'd like to get my $350.
Oh man, I remember when my grandfather was telling me, he's like, they told me I'm not going to be getting Social Security, and when he finally applied for it, or like got to the age where he could collect it, it was there for him. And then they were saying that about my parents. My mom's on that right now, so it's like, we'll see what happens. I'm hoping it's just an alarm and not an actual result. We'll wait and see.
Yeah, my mom's very much concerned. She's like, there better be Social Security for me when I retire, or else. I'm like, or else what, Mom? You're the most nonviolent person I've ever known. You'll just be very upset.
You're just saving it up for this moment.
Yeah, pretty much. It's like falling down with my mom.
Oh, wow, yeah. Okay. The first
I'd be there to support her, man.
The first,
You pay
the
into it
first
that many
scene
years,
that
better
pops
get
in,
something back.
the first scene that pops into my head anytime I think of falling, when he's in the freaking shop towards the back half of the film, and the shop owner dude takes the freaking snow globe from him. What's this? I'm not gonna repeat the word that he says, but then he just tosses the thing. It's hysterical.
Isn't it mind-blowing that the guy that directed that movie directed Batman and Robin?
Joel Schumacher, yeah. Joel Schumacher did Lost Boys, and
That's a great movie.
bunch of great. I mean, he's a very good director. Warner Bros. Was smart to hire him. The problem was that some of the team involved telling him what they wanted out of him was not the best direction or choice for the franchise.
No, I love Batman 66. Adam West was the man, but you didn't need to modernize that in the 90s. It was a different era, so.
Correct.
Now, folks, on screen in front of you right here are the new actors playing Superman and Lois Lane. We'll have you guess who's who in the chat. But no, this is Superman. His name is, hold on, you guys know it off. Okay, here we go.
David Cornsweet.
David Cornsweet and Rachel Brosnahan. Now, or Brohanan. I don't know how you pronounce it. I know her as the Marvelous Miss Maisel.
Yeah.
Brosnahan.
Yeah.
She's funny. I've seen her in like I said, the Marvelous Miss Maisel. She can act. She's entertaining. I've never heard of this guy until today.
Good.
And when I saw the image this morning or this afternoon from Andrew, I was like, it looks like Henry Cavill. Now in this photo, not as much, but Script, what were your initial reactions when you saw these actors cast in the roles?
I thought that's a good choice. For the names that have been swirling around, these were probably the better of them all. For starters, we have the male lead here who he's been working for a few years, but he hasn't made a huge impact to the point where his presence will supersede people's ability to believe in him being a Superman. So that's a really good choice to have. You don't want to have the celebrity be bigger than the character they're playing. And then we also have Rachel, who I've seen in Marvelous Miss Maisel, and she's done a bunch of period pieces around the time that Superman debuted in the 30s and in the 40s. So she's got that attitude, that reference that is the origin of where Lois Lane came from. A woman ahead of her time, ambitious, wanting to be the best and able to maintain that standard. And I think she also has great comic timing, which is really important for an actor to play off of something as serious as acknowledging Superman existing in their world and being able to, do that with a straight face. You have to be good at comedy to pull that off. Margot Kidder was good at comedy before she was cast as Lois back in the day. And same with Terry Hatcher for the 90s. She was a dramatic actress who had a great knack and talent for nailing comedy. And that won her the role for that as well. One of the big things that's also a benefit to this casting is that the age difference between the male and female lead is only 3 years, much like how between Christopher Reeve and Margot Kidder was only 4 years. But sadly, between Henry Cavill and Amy Adams, that was almost 10 years. So you have them closer in age together so that you can get them as a pairing side by side for a number of entries over the next decade to really build up this potential franchise and having some very strong continuity. And so long as there's no actor grievances and no tragedies, then that might be the case for this potential series.
Andrew, same question to you.
So I've actually, for the last month or so, been paying fairly close attention to the rumored top names that Gunn was looking at for the castings of these two, and he wound up going with the two that I was actually hoping for the most. So I see some people in the chat are commenting on how he's kind of scrawny. That's fine. You realize that these Hollywood actors get personal trainers and specific diets to jack up. Chris Hemsworth and Chris Evans didn't look like they did in their initial MCU outings prior to those films. So
well, the one thing to remember too is neither did Christopher Reeve. It took Darth Vader himself, David Prowse, to train him before he got right after he got the role, they bulked him up. So this guy's like 6'3" or 6'4". So I mean,
He's
at
the
least
right
he's
height,
tall.
and he's got. Here's the thing: he's got the facial structure, just like Henry Cavill did. He's got the right jaw for the role. He's got the right hair for the role. I can see him in the suit and be like, cool, I buy that. That's Superman. A lot of people like I can't even remember his name right now. The dude that's in Superman and Lois, because he doesn't look like Superman at all.
Oh, Tyler Hoechlin?
Yeah, like I have a lot of friends that really like the show. And they're like, oh, he's one of my favorite Superman. I'm like, really? He doesn't look like Superman at all. But I totally buy him. And the nice thing about Rachel here is that she also has the correct look. Amy Adams was a horrendous casting. She's very cute. She's a very talented actress. But Lois Lane needs to be very pretty, but also have a presence to her. She has to have a commanding presence to her. I didn't buy any of that out of Amy Adams. And she's also not supposed to be a bombshell. So on the other end of the spectrum, this isn't Mary Jane Watson. This isn't Jean Grey. This is Lois Lane. She's supposed to be beautiful, but she's supposed to have a very commanding presence to her. And so visually, and as somebody who cares acutely about accuracy to what the characters looked like in the comic books, and having that translated as close to a 1-to-1 as possible in their live action counterparts, I am happy with this.
Yeah, and that's not even one of her better photos either. I've seen her.
No,
in
it's
some
not.
Really made
I
up
saw
stuff
some
where she
better
looks-
ones.
where she can look like a bombshell. They wanted to make her. Yeah.
I saw one photo in particular that her hair was done just like I would expect to see Lois Lane's hair done, and I was like, "Yep, that one."
Yeah, I mean, when I would watch her on the Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, Miss Maisel, I always thought she was good looking. So
Yeah.
I'm happy with this this choice right
Oh
here.
yeah, she's beautiful. Like I said though, there are different types of beauty, not like rating them in terms of like, oh, this one's less beautiful than the other. It's just different types. I wouldn't say that, she's beautiful and therefore that she's not as attractive as, say, I don't freaking know, Olivia Wilde, who I would consider sexy or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, it's a different look, and the looks are important to the character.
Now, speaking of looks, I was surprised that they actually cast people that look like the real characters are supposed to look. Because we kept hearing about, oh, they're going to race swap Superman, they're going to do this, they're going to do that. Maybe one day, hopefully not, but...
Well, as
DC
far as
cannot-
we know, what's his face?
Oh yeah, like how's that Ta-Nehisi Coates script coming along?
Ta-Nehisi Coates' tokenized Superman film hasn't been canned officially. I hope it gets canned.
You know what?
can't-
It's probably just on the docket of like it's the silent cancellation at this point because it is part of the JJ Abrams deal. And keep in mind, he didn't collect any of the money on that. That was basically like a disbursement, meaning this is how much money he has to make these things if he gets a green light. And he hasn't gotten green light on much of anything that he's pitched to Warner Brothers. So that deal is pretty much dissolving day by day as it passes. And I would not be surprised if we don't hear anything by the end of the year that JJ Abrams has departed from his contract dealings with Warner Brothers and is looking for other opportunities at other studios, up to and including getting his Star Trek 4 finally produced.
I don't think I think today's his birthday, so you don't get a happy birthday from us here, JJ Abrams. You suck. But long story short, I hope you never get another piece of work adapted or another piece of work in general. You're in Star Trek, you're in Star Wars. What have you done that's good? I mean, you can
He's
sell
never
a
done
mystery
anything
box. No.
That's the thing. He would have made more money as a salesman, agent, manager, or producer only than ever as a director and writer. Because he knows how to sell stuff. He should be taking charge of the marketing over in Hollywood because he would revolutionize it to make us all excited to see movies again. But no, he wants the sole attention as a filmmaker. He wants to be the next Steven Spielberg. And because he wants that, Steven Spielberg, so long as he's alive, will never allow that to happen.
Growing up, I didn't understand what made Spielberg. But as an adult, I get it. And J.J. Abrams is so far removed from that.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, even his movies that are pretty decent, like Super 8, lack any of the qualities that a Spielberg movie has. So anything that guy's been involved with has just been a turnoff to me. And yeah, unhappy birthday to you, man. I'm glad we're not worried about more of your shit.
His son has tainted Spider-Man too, so.
Oh, dude, I would not touch that book. I wouldn't. After The Force Awakens, I said, no, I'm not giving any of this family another dollar.
You know what it is? It's Spider-Girl, except the only thing they did is they replaced Spider-Man's lost leg with a lost arm.
That's it?
Like, that's how derivative it is.
That's really shitty. We'll put it like that. I mean...
That's JJ.
Man... I mean, I got this Spider-Man figure that his leg broke off. Should I write a comic about that? No, it's like, just stop, guys. Stop coming up with derivative crap. Leave it alone. One timeline, one this, one that. We'll talk about multiverse.
Give us some
stuff
consequences, man.
Yeah, I've been reading a lot of X-Men lately, and they're great consequences. Fucking John Proudstar dies. Like, stuff happens in those books. Stuff should happen in this Superman movie. There should be stakes in this film. Now, what I've read about it, in terms of the story... I'm okay with this. It sounds like Superman's going to be a force for good in a world that's full of shit, and so that's what Superman should be.
The rumor is that he is going to be fighting the Authority, because the Authority is, of course, overstepping their responsibilities as a superhero team. That is the rumor. I don't know if that's 100%, but it kind of makes sense considering the fact that the first animated feature, aside from the Commandos one, is about the Authority. And for anyone that's familiar with the Authority in DC, they are presumed good guys, but they're really not. And I think that's something to consider, because there might be an allegory there with regards to the world has been so disillusioned by authority figures, by our governments, by our systems and institutions that they can't be trusted. And so it needs someone like Superman to remind them that the people are the ones that are in power and not these institutions.
It sounds like that's the right thing to put out. They always talk about movies have to hit at the right time. Like Star Wars has to come out post-Watergate, Vietnam, and all this stuff for it to really take off and capture people's attention. I'm hoping that's this. Because, things are what they are in the real world. We don't need to give the audience a lesson or anything like that. But in reality, something nice, bright, and optimistic, it's kind of needed. Because you watch so many movies that are dark or dour, like even the last Superman movies were just kind of like...
depressing.
Yeah, man. I don't want to watch a Superman movie with a blue filter over it.
So the one thing that's kind of interesting, and I was actually talking to a few writers about this just last few days, is that in the 70s and 80s, there was kind of like a counterculture movement in regards to... In the 70s, there's lots of anti-war movies, which some people would say, oh, they're very politicized. Well, I mean... they are in one regard, but they're basically saying like everything that's happened with regards to the war in Vietnam has not gone the way it's been advertised. And you need to raise up your voices. Those were the kind of like the implications, but those were messages that were byproducts of the stories they were telling. Like they said, okay, we're going to tell this story, and this happens to align with a perspective that this is that's against needless war, against sacrificing our soldiers for corporate, corporate benefit and what not. And then in the 80s, we got something that was a bit more like pro-liberty, pro-greed, pro-crony capitalism and whatnot. And then in the 90s, it kind of spun around, not really sure what it was, kind of like, pro-freedom, but not really, like balancing between the man and the communities and all that stuff. And then we kind of just lost our way in the 2000s. And we don't know what's going on. And that's kind of where we're at now. So hopefully this one can be more like a reminder of the values of the human spirit, which I think is a good, and that would also be a political message, but it's a very broad type of political message. It's not isolated, which is what we've been seeing with some of the movies over, especially the tentpole films over the last 8 years. So something a bit more broad with regards to individuality, choices, freedom, a moral compass of sorts. Even if they deviate from one degree to another, at least they're proceeding in a direction that's more unifying with regards to, I understand the broader sense of that. That's a good thing. Yes, it's right for Superman to rescue people and not float above them as they're clawing up, reaching for help, like he's some sort of god.
Now, to jump off of that, do you think that... how do I want to phrase this in terms of the whole optimism thing? Do you think the audience will respond well to that, or do you think that some of this more cynical stuff really is a reflection of what's needed to get people into a theater?
Well, they didn't. We already know how they respond to the darker, cynical Superman. They don't do it very well. Man of Steel wasn't a particularly successful film, and they only had diminishing returns after that in terms of the Snyderverse stuff. So
Yeah.
we we already know where that could go.
I mean, if the theme of this film is basically, depression versus hope and inspiration, and the concept of like what is Superman's legacy, well, that could be reflective of the fact of what was Superman's impact on the world since his creation. And he has a very recognizable symbol. A lot of people know what he stands for, the values that he stands for, the fact that he's a salt of the earth type of guy who he doesn't abuse the powers that he has, and that he cares so much about us that he prefers to live amongst us without, and do right, just have all the things that we want, share all the values that we want. Now, currently with the dawn of social media and the weird generation gap that's going on, I would bet good money, that if the three of us went to, say, a dense city, random one, and just had a little booth that said $10 if you can correctly tell me, and then we just leave it blank so that they don't have a chance to do research. But they come up and we say, can you tell me the origin of Superman? And they have to be kids, like, between the ages of like 7 and 15. And if they can tell you the origin, we'd give them $10. And if they can't, we can actually better gauge how much the current generation or that generation really knows the origin. Because for our perspectives, we know the origin of Superman. Our parents know the origin of Superman. But the kids that below us probably don't, because they're oversaturated with so many other things. And the last 10 years with regards to Superman has been so terrible and so offensive to the potential of kids that I don't think they'd really grasp onto it. Or maybe they're just behind in regards to this, the way that they're very much behind when we were at that age.
I mean, I wouldn't disagree with that one. You gotta wonder how much of the audience, how much they need to like cater this movie towards a younger audience, or how much of the like. Let me rephrase it like this: this is important to make sure you get that audience, because for a generation, the DC stuff that's not Batman hasn't really permeated as well as the Marvel stuff. The MCU Correct. Can't even go on about how important it is without, we can go on about how important it is, but with DC stuff, like growing up when we did, it was really a prime time. It was like DC was really the only one that had the movies. You had a couple indies here and there, like Spawn and stuff like that. But the DC cartoons, even though I preferred X-Men and Spider-Man over a lot of other shows, the DC cartoons were head and shoulders above everything else. They were better produced, they were better acted, they were better everything. And so we all grew up in this era of like DC just being everywhere, but they really have kind of gone away in a certain way. Like, even the merchandise feels lesser from DC than it does from Marvel. The only thing DC's had on Marvel over the last, I'd say, 15 years are the video games. And even those, it's like, well, the Batman Arkham trilogy is amazing. But then again, so is Spider-Man PS4. So I think if DC's smart, they definitely need to get this like current generation on board with their characters, because DC seems to appeal to even older people than your average comic book does. But this could be a chance to get that going. I mean, Superman isn't as lame of a character as people like to act like he is.
No, people that think he's lame and one-dimensional just don't know his character and have never actually read his books or even watched the animated series. I would actually say this. I would say that if they're smart, they would actually target our generation, Jeff. Yeah. Target us and target our parents, because we're the ones that have the money to go spend on the films and go spend on the merch. And we're going to bring I don't have kids, but we're the generation that would be bringing our kids with us, and kids absorb things so quickly. If they see you having fun with a film, they're going to naturally feed off of that energy, and they're going to have fun as well. And you're already you're kind of instilling in them, hey, this is Superman right here. And especially for a younger generation, it's going to be far easier for them to latch onto something that is filled with hope, filled with light and energy, and something that has positive undertones to it. And that's where they need to take this, because that's at the heart of every Superman story, because Superman embodies hope. He's one of the two characters in the DC universe that do that the most. And so I think target us, please us with that, and the younger generation will just follow. Because at this point, the normies that just want to be part of whatever the popular conversation is, as normies are wont to do, they're going to do that anyway, as long as the film's good and people are talking about it. They don't actually give a crap if it's accurate to the character or not. We've seen this happen for the last 10 years.
Oh yeah, like
you could put something in front of the normie and it be a 1-to-1 adaptation. If it's the popular thing and if everybody's talking about it, they're going to enjoy it because they don't actually care if it's accurate or not.
No, they just want it to use as a conversation starter. Like that. That's what you'd get. I mean, that's one of the angles of marketing for the films like this is to capture your core audience, your niche audience, if you will, and give it enough of a broad enough appeal so that the normies, the regular movie going audience will enjoy it and have something to talk about and hopefully want to go back and see it again. That's the model. That was the strategy that they managed to pull off with Iron Man, because Iron Man was like a B or C list character within the comics community at that time, and it was considered a low risk investment for Marvel Studios, even though they're like, yeah, we're putting that back, tens of millions of dollars behind this, but because the budget's so low and because we've got these filmmakers and we got this name power behind it, we might be able to make a little bit of our money back and not actually destroy ourselves. But because they did all the right things with regards to making the characters very enjoyable to watch, giving us a compelling story, a good arc with a guy who learns the truth about the abuse that's happening of his company and his name and his legacy, and he wants to correct that, people latched onto it and they loved it. Iron Man was a huge film in 2008. And it literally was the first time Warner Brothers with their Dark Knight trilogy kind of like, coming up around the bend with the Dark Knight movie coming out the next year, where they're actually like, holy crap, we might actually not be dominating this space anymore. And that ended up being true.
Yeah, 2008 was the last year that DC really dominated the films. I mean, Dark Knight, that just swept everyone's attention. Yep. But I mean, once Iron Man came back and Iron Man 2, hell, you didn't see Batman again until the Avengers had already dropped. And once the Avengers came, like, that was it for DC stuff. They were always they've been playing catch up for 11 years straight. Sometimes their movies are good. On average, they're okay at best. And some of them are just god-awful. But it's interesting to have seen the tide turn. And now we're in this weird superhero fatigue window where people want new stuff. People want different stuff. But do you think this could be a chance for DC to pick up some of that disinterest and get the superhero trend back on track?
Oh, 100%. Sorry, go ahead, Andrew. Yeah.
It's their game to win at this point because and they're already playing from behind, not even counting just the quality of the films that they put out over the last decade. I'm talking about their missed opportunity when Gunn announced what the slate was. They had an opportunity there after Marvel had completely failed for Phase 4 and already been fumbling with Phase 5. He had a chance while they were down on one knee to just decapitate them with a stellar lineup. And I think he dropped the ball in that regard. However, this is still DC's game to win if they can really nail this Superman film. And I think that at least in terms of what I'm seeing with the casting, I'm happy. I'm not upset about it. And I would really like to see them knock it out of the park with this because we've said this before, Jeff. There hasn't been a good Superman film in our lifetime.
No.
Not really, no.
The Quest for Peace was the year before I was born, and I wouldn't call that a good superhero movie or a good Superman movie.
I saw that in theaters. As a toddler, it was fantastic, but I was not coherent enough to register what was going on the screen, dialogue-wise. But yeah, this is DC's to win or lose. They have a great opportunity here. And the other part too is that basically the flat, like they're just wiping the slate clean right now with regards to all the DC properties. This is the old guard. This is them flushing it out. I mentioned on my Sunday stream that Friday to Friday drop off for the Flash was not the lowest that DC has ever suffered. The lowest is still from Friday to Friday, not the whole weekend, but from Friday to Friday. The lowest is still Batman v Superman at 81% or 82% drop, and the Flash was like 78. Granted, Batman v Superman took in a huge amount of money because people wanted to see those two characters side by side, and then when they saw the movie, they're like, "Well, where's Batman? Where's Superman?" They're just these two guys screaming Martha at each other. and they decided not to go back and see it again. And Warner's was like shocked at this, because from their perspective, and even from our perspective as an audience, we're thinking, oh man, you put Superman and Batman together on screen for the first time, live action, that should be a guaranteed $1 billion. And in order to further cement that $1 billion that $1 billion threshold, Warner Brothers was like, let's get Wonder Woman in there too. And they still couldn't pull it off.
Nope.
That tells you the state of the brand. And this was 2015, 14?
Yeah. And what I wanted to piggyback off of there was that this is something that people need to take into serious consideration, into account with this. DC's brand has been severely, and I cannot put enough emphasis on severely damaged when it comes to their cinematic presence. They have not had a good performing movie, a truly good performing movie in a while. Like, okay, Wonder Woman did very well. Aquaman definitely did very well. Outside of that, all of their films have done crap. Okay, so the first
Joker was
Suicide...
also really good, yeah.
Yes, and that... I don't really loop that in with the broader DC universe, but yes, you are correct. And that one also had a very low budget, and it just made bank. But I'm talking about their actual superhero films have not performed well at all. They've either underperformed to what their expectations were, or they were just abysmal, like what we saw with Black Adam, what we're seeing with The Flash. And people need to realize that will have long-term lasting consequences. We've seen this with Star Wars. Star Wars has had further and further, diminishing returns on their projects because people keep seeing the product get worse and worse, and fewer people, including the fickle, normie, fleeting audience of the general audience, they're not interested anymore. Because again, it's no longer the popular conversation, so they lose interest. We're seeing the same thing with DC. We've been seeing it for years. That's going to carry forward. And so I'm wondering if maybe Gunn and Safran know this. I mean, they have to know this. They have to have enough intelligent people around them, marketing-wise, to know that, yes, the brand has been damaged. And so maybe that's why they have these other projects in their like new slate that are leading up before Superman Legacy. So I'm wondering if maybe Blue Beetle is like a sacrificial lamb, as well as, isn't there one other project that's supposed to be dropping before Superman Legacy?
Yeah, Blue Beetle
Aquaman, right?
and Aquaman. Part of me thinks that the Authority represents the damaged brand. That's why I think he's using the Authority, because a lot of the behavior that they do in the comics, we've seen reflections of that in the Snyderverse take of things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm wondering, and if that's the case, I will give credit where credit's due, of where it's like, okay, we're letting people like get this out of your system, and the actual start fresh moment is Superman Legacy. I'm wondering if that's the case. But my question is, will that have been enough? Because I think there's a huge potential for Aquaman 2 to heavily underperform.
I think Aquaman 2 will underperform. I think really when it comes down to the casting, I think is a good step in the right direction. The next part would be, and I know this might be out of left field for some people, but I want to know who the composer is going to be for the film. Who's going to give us? Are we going to get maybe a new rendition of the John Williams theme? Or are we going to get something brand new? What are we going to get that's going to be iconic enough that's going to want to put butts back in the seat? I thought John Ottman, who did the editing and the score for Superman Returns, was fantastic because he did capture the Williams spirit, and he threw in a couple of new songs, renditions that ape that perspective. That
I think you have to have some sort of a rendition of the John Williams Superman film on this, because I will tell you this, despite what people, what their general feelings were on the Black Adam film, when Henry Cavill showed up in that final scene and you hear the Williams score started playing, my theater lost their skulls.
It's great music, and that it's so tied to the character, and it's not just one version of the character. It's the Superman theme. I was thinking back to when Justice League dropped, and they played the Batman theme and the Superman theme, and I was just like, oh, maybe this movie ain't great. It's not even that good, but there are a couple shots where I'm hearing the music and feeling the vibe. You have to at this point. The John Williams theme was attached to the character for decades, and I mean, what are you gonna do? Come up with another generic Hans Zimmer score? That's where a lot of modern movies have lost me. Their scores are shit today.
They are. There's nothing you can hum to. I mean, it was Alan Silvestri that came up with the Avengers theme. That is the only catchy theme out of all the MCU films.
Agreed.
There's no Iron Man theme. There's not really a Captain America theme. There's not really a Thor theme. There's not really an Ant-Man theme. No themes. But here's the funny part, too, because there was, I think it was late last year, social media was going like, Zack Snyder wanted to use the John Williams theme, but he couldn't get the rights for it. I'm like, well, then how the heck did Joss Whedon get it for Justice League?
Yeah.
Like, come on, they own it. That's a lie, because it's just people trying to, prop up their dead horse to say, like, what we wanted was good, and he's going to be the Superman eventually. Just keep on buying tickets and watching those movies eventually, and they're just going to keep on delaying it. Here, the way that James Gunn has been talking about it, and the one podcast he's done, and probably the only interview he's going to do up until he's actually starts the press junket for this film, is that he just wanted to make sure that if he had a story for this, it had a meaning.
Mm-hmm.
And it felt like something, and it didn't drop the ball in the third act, because he complained about those things.
It's funny. Zimmer's score is actually the one thing I like about Man of Steel. That's some of my favorite, like, workout or just work or even travel music. Like, I really dig it. However, it was an incomplete score without Williams' theme.
I mean, I'm not going to act like I don't listen to the Hans Zimmer Batman music and drive my car around. So, believe me, some of the Hans Zimmer music definitely works in DC. But, yeah, I mean, I just need something with optimism and hope. And, hell, when we were talking about Superman, I keep hearing, there's the prelude to the main theme from the original Superman movie?
Yep.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
that just kind of keeps playing in my head as we're talking. I'm thinking, like, oh, yeah, Superman. Because...
The Fortress of Solitude theme alone, fantastic.
John Williams is the greatest of all time. There's no debate. I mean, you could have arguments here and there, and I'd love to have that debate one day. But realistically, just from his work alone on, pick a decade, and John Williams is the best composer of that decade, and those movies have the best scores of all time. Like, see, if
like
you pick
all of
Jaws
them.
and Star Wars, boom, he's won on Star Wars alone. Oh, let's throw in the 80s. We got Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Mm-hmm.
All right, cool. That's another iconic score. Like, the dude can't...
Bring in Jurassic Park, baby.
Yeah. And didn't he do the Harry Potter theme at first? Wasn't he the first Harry...
He did.
So, I mean, come on. What?
He's done everything, right?
He has done a lot. One thing was funny. I'll share this story with you guys because it's actually quite funny. In early 2011, I got to listen to Henry Jackman, who did the score for X-Men First Class. And I had no idea it was for X-Men First Class. But he played one of the renditions of it. I'm like, oh man, is that for the Flash? Because they were working on early developments of the Flash before they decided to wipe the whole slate clean. And the assistant said, no, this is for the X-Men movie. I'm like, oh darn, because that would make a perfect Flash score, because there's this rapid set of beats and notes that come really, really fast. And if you do watch the X-Men First Class score or listen to it, you can definitely imagine the Flash running to a lot of his themes, because it's got this build up to it that's just like it. And now we get the music to the Flash that just came out. And it's like, I can't remember any song from that at all. It's like, what is this?
Yeah, when it comes to the Marvel stuff, have you noticed that they're just kind of going backwards to, like, Spider-Man? They use the old 60s theme just orchestrated.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
If they're smart, for whenever the X-Men come out from Marvel, like, it's funny how they're milking the brand dry to the point where it's crusty and old and everyone's ready to toss it off to the side, but it's like, you still got the X-Men, and if you do it the right way, that can be your brand of superhero movies. Like, oh, forget the Avengers, that's come and gone. Let's just do X-Men forever. If they're wise and they want to play on nostalgia, because that always works, at least in small doses, just use the cartoon theme. Don't
John
try to come up with
Lasserman
something
one.
else.
They actually did use it for
Doctor Strange.
Doctor Strange, yeah.
That was the
I don't
best
think
part
John
of that movie.
Lasseman got any money for it though, sadly. But
He didn't. When I had the writers of X-Men on, they were talking about how, he just got his hourly rate and doesn't own any of his catalogs. So, folks, check out that interview. It's on our Patreon and membership program pages.
yeah, which is really sad, because I mean, the guy for TV music, he kind of dominated the early 90s.
I mean, that is the guy. I know everyone's going to say, what about Shirley Walker with Batman? That's
she was great too, but yeah.
But the Power Rangers theme and the X-Men theme and all the different variations of the Power Rangers music. It's like there are certain things that maybe those aren't the greatest pieces of music, but for what they represent, more kids stood up off their couch and was ready to scream out.
Still
It's Morphin'
iconic.
Time. Yeah, I mean, come on, everybody knows Go Go Power
Still
Rangers.
iconic to a generation, without question. No one's trying to compare it to freaking Chopin or anything like that, right? But it's still something that has a lot of meaning and instills a lot of energy to an entire generation.
And I hope that the Superman movie can do that because, like I was saying a moment ago, we're of that age where Superman still meant a lot. It was cool that Superman was this holdover from an old generation. Like, my grandma knew Superman and Batman from back in the day. My mom grew up watching the Superman, the George Reeves show. So it's like Superman was this anchor that could tie you back for decades and decades. And I hope that's what this new movie is able to do because I remember when Superman, I'll say it very bluntly, I remember when Superman didn't suck. When picking up a comic book of Superman was kind of cool. When playing a game with Superman in it wasn't that bad. When playing with the toys was awesome. Watching the cartoon, like thinking about the movies that were gonna be. It was exciting, to like Superman back in the 90s. And then there was just something that happened. And I would say it's before Superman Returns. It's like there was just a weird window where Superman just kind of, I don't know, lost his sparkle or lost his smile.
Cynicism took over, yeah. That was it. Cynicism took over. I remember around the late 90s, people were kind of scoffing at Superman, which I never understood because it's like, it's Superman. He's made it this far. But yeah, there was a cynicism there. Then there was the Smallville show, which because it was a teen drama angst, that kind of diminished the strength of the character because we're seeing Clark Kent not be Clark Kent. I could never imagine Clark Kent to be a whiny, depressed, angsty kid. It just doesn't make sense. He's a smart enough kid to realize he can do things that others can't, and how he never cared to show off. Like that's the other part too. It's not in his nature to show off. It just seems wrong. But what they end up doing in Smallville is they made him like, oh, I can't show off. I can't be normal. I can't. It's all the things that he can't be. But Clark's more the type of the guy's like, no, this is all the things I can be without the powers. He's just a happy-go-lucky kid that the only flaw he has is like he can't tell people that he's an alien. Why would he want to? Right? Like there's no advantage to it. It's when he gets older and he realizes that, I have all these powers. I can actually help people in need. And he has to contemplate like, well, if I do that, do I lose my privacy? Do I lose my individuality? And that's where he develops, the Superman guys, where he can go into that moment, do the thing that's right, and then get out, and then go back to what he finds and respects and cherishes as normal. And Superman is a job to him, but it's a responsibility as well, and it's a role he plays because he gets to say thank you to the world that existed, that allowed him to exist, because he was sent off from a dying one.
Do you think this movie is going to feature the secret identity like the classic Superman?
I hope so.
I do too. Like, there's nothing better than in the first Superman movie, after he and Lois go flying, not around the world, but wherever they go flying to, and she comes back and she's on cloud 9. Oh, I just flew with Superman. And Clark perks up and he wants to tell her, and then he just kind of slumps his shoulders down and goes out for that hamburger. Like, it's such a cool scene. And I hope we can get that, like in
something
the first
of that.
Spider-Man movie.
Yeah.
You remember how like Peter wants to tell Mary Jane at Norman Osborn's funeral, oh, there's nothing more than I want to tell her who I am and all this shit. But he's got to say, no, I'll always be your friend because he's got to protect her. Like, I like that. I hope they have that like level of, I don't want to say gravitas, but that level of something to add to this film because
it creates tension.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And they always make it to be like, this is why I don't like a lot of modern Marvel comics or modern Marvel books or movies or anything like that, is they just treat it like everybody's in on the fun of being the superhero. There's no other flip side to it. It's like maybe in the third movie Aunt May dies, but every other minute it's just Spider-Man having fun. Oh, everybody loves me. Everybody this, and I got great friends and a girlfriend and this and that. Like, I like when the superhero, there is a moment of like, when they're not the hero, they're still just an average everyday person who deals with shit.
A moment of vulnerability. Yeah.
It's so important.
I think it's really important. And one of the things I'm really hoping that James Gunn pulls off in this is, I know a lot of people want the bumbling, shy Clark Kent, but in today's modern age, I don't think him just being the fastest typist Perry White has ever seen is going to work muster with regards to newspaper and reporting today, because speech to text is used quite often. So Clark Kent, he can be a little meek, a little reserved, but he still has to be formidable enough with regards to being a good writer and an investigative reporter to earn his spot at the greatest newspaper in the world. Like you have to give us that level of believability for him. I'm fine with him not being like, super confident and what have you with regards to the situations of danger, like what Superman can do. But I got to believe that this guy, this Clark Kent, is good enough to be, on the payroll next to a woman like Lois Lane. You got to give me that, because otherwise then I'm not going to believe this universe, because how are you going to really have fun justifying Perry White hiring a reporter who's afraid to ask a question?
Right. Well, I think that's an important thing that requires a very good writer that understands the character, because that requires, and this is a word that we don't like to throw around because in the connotation that it's ordinarily used these days, it's very negative. But to take something from decades ago and bring it into the modern era. Oh no, I used the word modern. But what I'm meaning by that is you have to make it connect with people in a believable way in the present day and age. Seeing Peter Parker walk around in a sweater vest and a bow tie wouldn't fly in 2020, okay? Nobody does that.
I would think he's gay.
Nobody, not even dweeby Peter Parker is going to do that, okay? Not even he's that stupid. So, to your point, with regards to Clark Kent, you're absolutely correct. In order for it to be believable to the people that are going to be watching the movie, and that's the people not from the 50s, it's people from today, right? You might get some people that were alive then, but for the most part, it's going to be slightly younger. A good writer can take the key tenets of Clark Kent, what make him Clark Kent, and that's not the bumbling idiot. That doesn't make him Clark Kent. There are certain mannerisms, and hopefully this actor has the acting chops to be able to pull that off with the right amount of subtlety, to where it's like, okay, he's definitely making sure that he doesn't stand out in a way that could potentially give away that, oh, this guy, maybe he does look like Superman, right? That's the whole thing, because the whole joke is, oh, just putting on the glasses, that's all you have to do? No, it's in the mannerisms. It's how you carry yourself. That's how that distinction is made, because then nobody looks at Clark Kent and the way that he's acting, the way that he presents himself, and thinks that could possibly be Superman. But in order to make that believable today, it requires just the right touch, the right amount of subtlety. And I think a good actor, which I'm hoping this guy is, and a good writer can do, and a good director can pull out of the actor. So it's going to require a really all-star combination. And I'm hoping that they manage to pull that off, because I'd like to see that. Because if I want to see the bumbling, kind of not dweeby, but like low T Clark Kent, I can watch the good Christopher Reeves films, right? I can do that. But those, if that exact film were to release today, I wouldn't believe it.
And the other part too is, can they capture the farm boy aspect with Clark? And
that's
also,
as well.
Are they smart enough to recognize the fact that within the behavior of the DC universe, nobody really expects Superman to have a secret identity. There are certain things about how he presents himself that would prevent anyone from thinking, well, why would Superman ever have a secret identity? Because he doesn't wear a mask. He sticks around for a quick moment to say hi or thank you or what have you, and then flies off. There's nothing for them to even, fathom. Oh yeah, Superman, he has to have a normal life or do something. They wouldn't see that. They wouldn't process that. They'd be like, well, if he has a secret identity, well, why can we see his face? Clearly, we'd catch him and know him. And the fun that Clark Kent can have is that he's smart enough to realize that the way he presented himself, the whole world should have no reason to believe that Superman has an alternate identity, which allows him to kind of relax a little bit as Clark Kent and throw on the glasses, position himself a little differently, And the other part too is how many people are going to see Superman regularly enough to make a connection that he and Clark Kent are the same person. I mean, he doesn't like to do TV interviews. When he gets his picture taken, he can determine based on how he flies or what he's doing if his face is going to be clear in the resolution of the camera or not, because he can vibrate himself or he can put himself in such an angle where wherever he is, a good photographer can't quite snap the money shot, as it were, for him. So there's lots of things in his control here that he can have fun with. And I think there's good comedy in there that won't break the character. Like if you have Lois Lane, she's been trying for the last year to get a good picture of Superman with Jimmy Olsen. And every single time they think they got one, they go in, they look at the digital roll, or they go look at the film and like, nope, slightly blurred, slightly out of focus. We got the chest, we got the suit, can't get the face. That would be a fun, frustrating joke, a running joke to have in a movie like this. Because Perry White would be like, well, it's good. Olsen, you're this close away to getting fired, but everything else in that shot is beautiful. You just couldn't get Superman's face. It's like, well, he's using his heat vision, Chief. It's bright. It's blurring out his cheekbones and nose. Like, there's lots of things that you could do with that. And I think if I'm just crossing my fingers that we get some funny little jokes in that nature that work out, that don't break the universe, and have fun with the character of Clark Kent being able to convincingly keep that secret. And I would love it if they didn't reveal, no one ever found out who he was, just like in the Reeve film. No one found out Clark Kent and Superman were the same person.
I'm glad I would like that too. And I'm glad you brought up the humor element, because I don't want this to be a Marvel level comedy, but I do want there to be like haha moments, or like the old ones were, like
a chuckle here and there.
Yeah, it shouldn't be grim and dark.
The audience should be able to smile a lot during a Superman film.
I want to be taken back to. I don't want to say be taken back to a simpler time, because it makes me sound so old and sad. But like,
don't make me feel old like that, Jeff.
I'm sorry, Grandpa, but no, I would like for a lot of the stuff to be played for laughs, because James Gunn is a comedic director. I'm not gonna kiss the guy's ass all of a sudden, but I like the Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy. I like his work before that, and so I don't necessarily think everything he's done doesn't line up with what Superman can be. And so hopefully they find a way to like for me, Superman Returns was trying to be this homage to the Reeve stuff at a weird time, and it was trying to be a throwback to those classic films in kind of a weird transition period where Spider-Man was the main event. For everyone that talks about like decades of superheroes, the end of 1989 through the entire 90s, Batman was the premier superhero. Everything was all about Batman. But then when Spider-Man hit in 2002, Spider-Man really became a bigger deal than he already was, and he already kind of stuck around from like that cartoon in the 90s throughout. He was always just as big of a deal. He just didn't have a movie. His games were just as popular, his books, his toys were better, like everything about that. But Superman Returns just came out in this weird window of time where I think they were trying to grab for something that can't really come back. And I hope that this movie doesn't try to go so far back to be something that won't resonate with today's audiences, but still be something that can resonate with the audiences without going the Zack Snyder route, because I'm very happy that the Zack Snyder era of all this is over. I know there are tons of people online already angry about, the Snyderverse was better. Was it? Because I lived through each one of those movies.
Where were you?
I watched it. No, it wasn't. The Snyderverse had some really fantastic castings. Gal Gadot, Ben Affleck, Henry Cavill. Those were perfect. The characters just weren't written as the characters. And then you had some really bad castings in Jason Momoa and Ezra Miller.
Oh, Ezra Miller damaged the Flash.
I won't even acknowledge Fisher, because Cyborg doesn't belong in the Justice League.
No, I mean, he did start there in the comics, but he went over to the Teen Titans pretty quick, and that's where he flourished, and I think that's where he belongs. And if you want to do any sort of course correction, him starting with the Titans makes more sense than starting with the Justice League.
He doesn't have a relationship with anybody or a connection with anybody in the Justice League. His connections and relationships are all built within the Titans, specifically the new Teen Titans. Mm-hmm. That's where he belongs, that group. I do not accept or entertain him being part of the Justice League at all. I don't like it.
Now, I've been looking at the chat tonight, folks. Thank you for joining us. I wanted to ask you guys, since we have Superman and Lois Lane cast, how do you think they should go with Jor-El or Lex Luthor or some of these other iconic Superman characters? Do you think that this film is actually going to introduce everyone at once? Like, if we go back to Superman 78, you get Lex Luthor, Superman, General Zod and his crew, like everybody. And I don't want to see General Zod again. I'm done with General Zod.
I don't want to see Zod, not for several years. I actually also don't want to see Lex in this film unless he's like teased towards the end,
or like a supporting character from behind the scenes type of thing, right?
Yeah,
like something in the background.
Yeah, I don't want him. You build up to Lex. You don't need Lex right away. Prove to me that you can write a good Superman story without trying to lean on like Superman's 2 or 3 biggest villains, Brainiac, Lex, and Zod. Like, leave those aside, because that was one of the mistakes that freaking Snyder did, was he blew his wad with all the biggest Superman stories in the span of 2 movies, and that set DC on a collision course for garbage right from jump. You don't need those characters to tell a good Superman story.
No, I mean, part of me is wondering, because
I would like to see Michael Rosenbaum be Lex, though.
I've already seen him for Lex for 7 years. That's enough. But part of me is wondering is if the meme that went around a few years ago where it was like, I would love to see a story where Clark Kent exposes something illegal going on in the FBI and they try to kill him, but they can't. Like every time they send an assassin after him, they just can't seem to kill Clark Kent. They just don't know why. And I'm like, I could see that. I could see James Gunn playing with that, but more in a serious tone. With the Authority, like the Authority is doing something, Clark Kent it finds a clue to expose them that they're actually like trying to take over the world or what have you, and so they try to go and kill him. But every time they try to do it discreetly, it doesn't work because he's Superman, and it just frustrates the heck out of them to the point where they're like, okay, let's just let's just try and put Metropolis under lockdown, so to speak, until Superman reveals himself or until Clark Kent kills the story or what have you, and they might go into that conflict where this simple little newspaper reporter is exposing this corrupt superhero institution, and the world is actually kind of opening their eyes to that, and then Superman is there to defend the people who'd be suffering under the Authority. In that case, I mean, I'm just spitballing here, but I just want to see something really cool and inventive that doesn't necessarily involve Lex Luthor or Zod or Doomsday. And if
never Doomsday again.
No, Doomsday was literally just done to delay the comic that year's issues and stories one more year so that they could do the wedding album in line with Lois and Clark's wedding on the TV series. That was the only reason they invented Doomsday.
The Superman Doomsday stuff is the reason why I didn't read Superman comics as a kid. I liked the character and I got into the toys and the other stuff, but when I would read Superman, he was dead. He was not around. So at that, that formative age of when I'm starting to read comics, he was nowhere to be found. So for as much as I love the character, Doomsday killing off Superman kind of ruined my Superman reading forever. That's just a personal anecdote.
Did for a lot of people, yeah.
And I don't want to see. Sorry, Jeff, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just saying it was hard to figure out what's up because there's no Superman. It's like, hey, this is a book called Superman, but he's not here.
Right. I don't have a problem with doing a Doomsday story, but not for a long, long time. You build up to things like that at some point, eventually, down the road. Just like you build up to Zod. You build up to Brainiac. You don't freaking blow your wad. I don't need to see that in the first 3 films, okay? I don't need to see that, I don't think, even within this decade, to be honest. Because we just had a really shitty version of Doomsday and Zod. Now that I think about it, kind of all rolled into one, didn't we?
Literally, actually, it was,
and
I made from Zod.
because of that, I don't need or want to see either of those villains for a good long time. And you don't have to. He has a ton of villains. Now, Superman doesn't have the most iconic rogues gallery. Sure, he's not Batman. But you can still leverage the villains that he does have. And
Toyman would be awesome. I see
no reason why. Yeah, absolutely. I would love to see a really well done Metallo. There are still, even though again he doesn't have the greatest rogues gallery in the world, there are still enough really solid villains that he has. You could tell very good stories with those villains in the course of a 2-hour film, And I would like to see that. And you could do that for 2-3 films without having to really touch Lex Luthor. You can have him again, yeah, like you said, script. You can have Lex as kind of a background character. You know, maybe he's trying to suss out what Superman's role in all of this is. Maybe he in some ways respects what he's doing, but also on the other hand, he has his own concerns and his own designs for what he wants to do with the world, what he wants to do with Metropolis, and therefore Superman would either be in the way of that or he sees him as a danger, whatever angle you want to go with, because we've seen all sorts of variants and things in between of those ideas within Lex Luthor throughout decades in both the comics and the animated series, all that. But you don't need to lean on Lex to be the main villain of these films for a while. You could build up to that. I would rather than build up to Lex being an issue. You know, that was something that I did. Smallville had a lot of problems. I did like that there was a slow build to Lex's full heel turn, full blown out villain status. I thought that was handled very well. I think honestly he was probably the best character in the entire series. And
I'd say John Glover's Lionel was probably the best character.
Well, okay, you know, I will actually retract my statement. John
You're
Glover,
very on point with Michael Rosenbaum and what he was doing with Lex. Yes,
John Glover was incredible. But more to my point is that you build that. So tease Lex as being a presence in the first film towards the end of it or towards the back half. Maybe in the second film he has a little more background involvement. We see him a little bit more. But it's not until like movie 3 or something like that we actually he's got far more of a presence. And it's like, oh, this guy's a problem, right? Because that to me would show them willing to take a risk and not just lean on the easy go-tos. It's like with Batman, he did the lazy writers go immediately to Joker.
Yeah, that's what disappointed me
with
with
Spider-Man. Yeah, Spider-Man, they immediately go to Green Goblin or to Doc Ock. And there's so many other villains within these characters' rogues galleries that you can go with.
Yeah, like the one thing that only disappointed me with The Dark Knight is the fact that it was the second of the 3 as opposed to the third. I think it would have been a great third.
I would have ended with Joker. Yeah.
Yeah. But again, it's like they didn't know if they were going to get a third when they made it, and they were trying to ape the ending to Batman Year One in the comics for that part. But you're absolutely right. You can build up to Lex Luthor. You can have him always be a guy in the background. Maybe he's funding Metallo, or maybe he's responsible for creating Parasite, or maybe Toyman is trying to kill Lex Luthor because he stole one of his proprietary inventions. And I just want to see a great set piece of a giant, 1981 toy robot walking down the streets of Metropolis, and Superman has to fight it. Like I want that type of set piece.
Yes,
but at the same time, I want something really. I also want something to be really heartfelt, where maybe Clark Kent and Lois realize that, yes, look, Lex Luthor did do this horrible thing, but they can't prove it. And now this guy who Lex Luthor has driven to the edge and has done these horrible things is basically going to spend the rest of his life in Stryker's Island because, Lex Luthor exploited him and pushed him to the edge. And there's something really great that you can explore with, a very human thing to explore with on that part. And I'm also crossing my fingers that this movie is under 2 hours.
I see an opportunity for them to kind of have a pared down and scaled down version of the build-up to Thanos with Lex. You can do things like that where he's kind of operating in secret in the background, and then he's finally presented in all of his evil glory.
Yeah.
I have a weird question for you guys. Since we know what kind of DC universe we're getting, and James Gunn is actually very good with outer space, do you think we'll actually get a DC that finally balances Earthbound stuff and outer space and can make it feel natural like it does in the comics?
I hope so.
Because I wouldn't mind seeing Superman go off planet to like in the middle of something, or if the story serves it, and it's like, oh yeah, he's off doing this, or he fights was it Mongol or whatever?
Mongol
like,
on Warworld,
Mongol, yeah.
Like down the road, like I don't want this in the first movie. That's
too much.
This is how I feel every superhero movie, the first one in a series or a franchise, should be treated. You make it a great singular story as if you're not guaranteed to make another one. So you don't try to put every little thread. Like, that's where the Amazing Spider-Man movies really hurt themselves, because they wanted to set up for the Sinister Six before they even had 2 solid stories through.
Yeah, that was a Sony thing, but yeah. Honestly, there was the same issue with the Raimi trilogy with Spider-Man 3. That was Sony. That was Sony's studios sticking their fingers in there and being like, "Hey, we want you to do Venom." And Sam Raimi was like, "I don't want to do Venom."
It's also Avi Arad's going to Sony. Hey, we could do Venom. Sony's like, hey, we should do Venom. Sony goes to Sam Raimi. Raimi, you're doing Venom. I'm not ready for Venom right now.
Yeah, and there was the same exact issue with the Amazing Spider-Man films. The initial plan was not to have all of those villains there, but Sony once again was like, hey, we want to set up this, our own little universe that we've got going on over here, and we want to do a Sinister Six film, so we got to set up 3/4 of them in this one film. It's like, what? That's not necessary. Did we not learn our lesson in Spider-Man 3? Apparently not.
Mm-mm.
Well,
one thing that's the same thing over and over.
Well, one thing that we can probably history is giving us a lot of information now with regards to the productions over on the MCU side, because you could pretty much track that the day James Gunn was fired from the MCU is when MCU went off the rails, because this Phase 4 was originally going to be starting with Guardians 3, and it was going to be expanding into the cosmic side of things. James Gunn's position at Marvel was going to be overseeing all the cosmic stories of Marvel in Phase 4, while Kevin Feige was overseeing the Disney Plus stuff, and Esposito was basically managing the planet Earthside planetary films. That was the initial plan. And Alan Horn threw a wrench in that when he fired James Gunn. So now we've got James Gunn over at DC. We've got Superman. We know he's doing the Authority. He's doing the Creature Commandos. He's doing his Waller thing, which I think is basically going to be a winding down of whatever the initial visual style was of previous DC franchise. And I think he's got it in his nature, because he's got a plan with regards to the Green Lantern Corps and an Earthbound story featuring Jon Stewart and Hal Jordan, that I think he's got a good guiding posts set for what he's able to do with integrating the cosmic side of things on DC with the Earthbound side of things. The question I have is, like, I just want to see what his pace is going to be, because if he goes too fast, audiences are going to be oversaturated and probably a little it's doubtful of it.
Too much too soon when you do that. It was like the Snyderverse again. As much as I love shitting on Snyder, that was a huge problem with them then, and I don't think superhero burnout is a correct thing. I think people just want good superhero content. But with the MCU, like, there was such a slow burn up to Infinity War and Endgame. People forget that. Like, we don't need all of these gigantic, every single film, the world is going to freaking end. No. Sometimes you need to just tell a handful of, like, fairly self-contained to a city stories, or a measurable geographic location. You don't need to put the entire damn world at risk or the entire cosmos at risk every single film, and that happens way too often these days. It happens way too often in comics, and it happens way too often in the movies. I think they reflect each other in that way. So yeah, that's why I want them to start, especially with Superman. He does not belong in space for a long time. I don't want him there. Yeah. Keep it Earthbound, and then you want to start telling some stuff in space. Okay, well, you've got Green Lanterns coming. Okay, so then you can deal with that then.
You got Green Lanterns. Part of me wonders is if he'll make a Justice League film and make him either the Appalachians will form the Justice League as it did with the comics, or if he'll use a Brainiac story, because Brainiac would be taking Metropolis and then destroying Earth, and that's a pretty big deal. I mean, you can have that solely Superman, but I don't know. I think it would be a good angle to use to try and bring those teams together in a reasonable amount of time, because we do know that's eventually where they're going. They're just not going to release that anytime soon.
You see, I'm still pissed off at James Gunn for using Starro in the Suicide Squad film, because that was what I would have put my money on to do for his first Justice League film. Mm-hmm. Do a nice throwback there, make Starro the villain, right? And yeah, I'd be down with Brainiac because we haven't seen that in a very long time. But as long as we don't try doing Darkseid, I don't want Darkseid. You build up to Darkseid like Marvel built up to Thanos. Like, that's a decade down the line. Okay.
Yeah.
because
You can give me Steppenwolf within the first 4 movies, I'll be fine with that. But you give me Darkseid like movie 2 to 4, I'm like, you're rushing to the finish line right now, buddy.
yeah, I don't want to deal with anything that's Apocalypse until like at least 5 years in. Like, you build up to all that. So the thing is, DC has so many wonderful characters, and each one of them have, whether they have 2 of them or whether they have 10 of them, some amazing rogues in their gallery of villains that you have at your disposal that are so iconic. Like, take your time and tell some fantastic stories with each of these individual characters. I want to be excited for a Flash film. I want to be excited for a Green Lantern film. Give me a reason to be. Build up to that. Tell me some solid stories with characters that I recognize. That'd be helpful. Because you've yet to do that, whether visually or in demeanor, or a combination of both. In some cases, they just have so much that they've just wasted for the last decade plus. Like, take your time with it. Don't be in a rush. You are not catching up to Marvel, and you don't have to now, because Marvel is in decline. So now, don't see that as an excuse to blow your wad too soon again. Now all you have to do is kick this off with one really, really good movie that gets audiences hyped, that brings back your core demographic, your core fans, and makes them excited for it. Then you're going to be golden. Then you can just take your time, put out each film, make sure you do it right, and then before you know it, in 10 years, you're sitting where Marvel was at Infinity War. Just don't be in a rush to get there.
And if you do it well, then you will break the box office opening weekend record of like maybe 250 million opening weekend or something of that nature.
There's no reason other than it being a dog shit film that a Justice League movie should have made less than an Avengers film. Because I'm sorry, right. the MCU made the Avengers super popular and household names. The Avengers book was never as big a deal as the Justice League. DC has all the teams. Outside of the X-Men, DC's got all the teams.
Yeah, the X-Men...
And the Justice League has... Okay, so sure. On the Avengers, you got Captain America and Thor and Iron Man. These are characters, though, that the Avengers is mainly made up of formerly B-listers. Yeah. Marvel's A-list characters are all singular characters.
Well, Marvel, you got to remember too, when Marvel creates the Avengers back in 64, they're still a fairly new enterprise. I know Timely Comics had been around for quite a while, and they were digging out some of their old characters, but the formation of Marvel's so interesting. And if you go back and you read some of these old Avengers books, it very much feels like these stories are taped together. It's like, well, we got this and we got that. What do we got? And so that's how it kind of comes to be. And you're right, though, about the Justice League being the premier super team. And up until, 2012, everybody was on the Justice League kick. I mean, the cartoon was one of the best DC cartoons. I
freaking love that show.
And it's still great. I mean, it was highly rated. The toy line, I know people, we always talk about the merchandise here on WCBS, but that Justice League toy line ran longer than the show. That thing was out in stores. Those orange boxes had the Justice League characters everywhere. They were the premier animated superhero team for a long time. And you're right, a crap film is what definitely killed it. And I, for one, really want to see the day where it's not that if I have to pick a side, Marvel or DC, I lean towards Marvel Comics. That's my jam in terms of the actual printed books, past stuff. But I would be very happy to see DC take over from Marvel, because what I want at the end of the day is for the superhero genre to remain forever in film. I don't want the superhero craze to have passed. I don't want these things to die. I want bad movies to go away. And so if DC can take the ball and run with it, and I'll give them the benefit of the doubt, because I liked the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, and I'm hoping against hope that this stuff works with James Gunn. But that's what I want. I want to be entertained. I want to have great superhero content, and I want these stories to resonate with us all like we know they should. There is no reason that you have to be so edgy and fucking, I don't know how to say it, but trying to be so edgy like the Zack Snyder stuff, you just turned everyone off. Like, everyone knows what these characters are supposed to be and what they represent, and they have missed the mark for so long. Please, Warner Brothers, get your shit together and do it right this time, because I don't want to sound super negative, but this is it. If they don't get it right this time, there's no more reboots, there's no more changes, there's no more fixing it. You'll have to go back to formula, and you'll just be able to make Batman movies, and that's about it.
Back to formula.
Yeah, basically there'll be such a gap that our children will be our age.
Yeah.
When they start having to try and make it again.
They botch this Superman film, they're done.
Yeah.
They're done for a long time.
But if they succeed with the Superman film, one of the things we're kind of glossing over is that these two actors are also going to be either voicing the characters in video games and cartoons, or also playing them in HBO and Max miniseries.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, they are?
Yes, because these are going to be the actors across all DC media, film, television, games, cartoons.
Yeah, James Gunn's thing is a kind of a unified universe.
Yeah.
This
if
time
Legacy does really well, and because they're spending a lot of money on sets and costumes and whatnot, they can, if they mass produce some of those costumes, like Superman costume, which would be smart for them to do, they will then be able to say, oh, we're going to have Superman Legacy, and before we go into the follow-up for Superman Legacy, we're going to have, say, a 6-episode, hour-long miniseries of Superman and Lois on Max to hold you over until that next movie comes out. And then they might do the same thing again. They might do that throughout all their characters. This is a potential. It's not a guarantee, mind you. But this is a potential, because we do know that they're going to make video games and cartoons, and that these two actors will be voicing those characters in those mediums as well. And if they do this, and this is kind of like the Dream Team model. This was a model that was being pitched as early as 2005 to all studios, back when they're pitching for Marvel, back when they're pitching for DC. Marvel is kind of doing it, but they're botching it up right now with their Disney Plus stuff. But if Warner Brothers gets it right, you will end up having stuff you want to watch on Max that will lead into the films. But ideally, the smart thing would be that you don't have to watch them to know what's going on in the films. But if you do watch them, you just have another story that you want to watch. Like, that's the thing. Don't make it homework. Make it fun. Make it enjoyable. Give us something extra, and then find a less than 2-minute scene in the sequel to catch those that may have not seen the show up with it, and hopefully inspire them to want to go back and watch that show that they missed, because hey, more of these actors that we like on screen. And that's all in the perfect world, mind you, because that's what Marvel's been trying to do. They're trying to basically say, hey, we need to have some TV shows with these characters in between the movies to sort of keep you in the conversation all the time. But the shows are bad. Like, they're really bad. And as nobody,
they're bad, and they're also about characters nobody gives a crap about.
Well, I mean, they could have been characters we did give a crap about if they actually put effort in for us to give us a crap about them. And that's the problem. Like, the Guardians of the Galaxy proved that if you put some effort behind those characters, we will care about them, because nobody cared about them. They debuted in Avengers with Mightiest Heroes 3 years before their movie debuted. Nobody really paid much attention to them at all. Like, the one episode, okay, there we go, bye, disposable, moving on. And then Guardians Volume 1 hits, and it's a surprise hit. Nobody was expecting it to do as well as it did. And
no.
So if you put the effort in, you will get a good response from the audience. Most likely, it seems to be the case. That's the pattern that I've seen, and I would love that. I would love to have like Superman movie, and then a couple of episodes of Lois and Clark just investigating some things, with Superman showing up every once in a while, but not really. Get a nice little base ground thing where we can see a blossoming chemistry between these two, and then when we see them closer in the sequel, we understand it. But at the same time, we're not missing anything if we don't watch those episodes or don't subscribe to Max or what have you.
Let me be an artist for just a moment. I hope they get the Superman costume right.
Yes.
And I do mean the trunks and everything, because it's not just about, oh, I'm nostalgic for a certain look. The trunks break up the blue. It makes it look cool. They brought it back in the comics, and it's trying to me, taking away that, it's like taking away certain parts of the Batman suit or the Spider-Man costume. Like, I hope they just go old school. And I don't mean like first appearance Superman. I'm talking like prime Superman. Hell, I would even be happy with like a modernized version of the old Fleischer suit, where he actually has maybe his logo's got the black in it, or it's a little darker. Like, I just don't want the I like Henry Cavill as Superman. He was a good Superman, but I hated his costume. I thought it looked weird and shiny and just all the wrong things. I want it to be bright and colorful.
I wanted to believe that it could be fit fit underneath his clothes. I could not believe Henry Cavill's suit would fit underneath his suit.
No, not at all.
Fun fact is that Warner Brothers has that they keep in pristine condition the original Christopher Reeves costume, one of many that were made, but they have that one primarily for auditioning Superman in, and they would not have made any casting commitment without throwing Dave here in that costume, because their goal is if you wear the costume and nobody laughs, you are Superman. And there's likelihood that the three that we were seeing circulating around before this announcement were probably the three that put on the suit and nobody laughed. And next it was just, all right, now we got the look, let's get the chemistry.
Right.
And the rumor has it that Rachel here was probably the first pick, and it was just testing against which is going to be the best Superman for her. And I think that's a good thing to have, because you want the love interest to have great chemistry with the man. And sadly,
because Man of Steel had none of that.
No. And the other part too is every live action Superman film, excluding maybe Superman Returns, Lois Lane was really not much in their screen time wise comparison to Superman, Lex Luthor, and the set pieces. I mean, I loved Margot Kidder's Lois Lane, but she only has maybe a handful of scenes really throughout that entire film, but it's really heavy on Superman and Lex and whatnot. Because again, Lois Lane's only really in the last hour of the movie, and most of it is dominated by Lex and Superman. And in Superman Returns, there's a lot of Lois in there and not so much Clark and Superman. And I think that's kind of what hurt it. They need to find that sweet spot. Even with Man of Steel, you have a fair amount of Lois, but not so much with her on screen with Clark or Superman. And then the other part too is we don't even get a Clark Kent in Man of Steel. Like I couldn't describe what's Clark Kent like at the Daily Planet.
We don't get a Clark Kent or a Superman in Man of Steel.
No, we don't. We don't get any definition of them. Like we can't. You couldn't go to a random person and be like, okay, so I saw Man of Steel and it's supposed to be about Superman, but he doesn't do anything Superman like. He doesn't do anything Clark Kent like. He's just a hobo who wanders from job to job, kind of looking for something, and then somehow he gets a job at the Daily Planet, which is a prestigious newspaper, and has a Pulitzer Prize-winning writer on staff, but there's nothing to denote in his background that we've seen up to this point that he would qualify to have such a job. Like, it's really mind-boggling story.
The one thing I hated that Man of Steel did, it sort of copied the Casino Royale formula, where you'll see the hero for this movie, but they'll become the superhero or they'll become James Bond by the end. And then both Man of Steel and Casino Royale's follow-up, or both of those follow-up films, they kept stretching it out. And then you kind of never necessarily got the prime version of the superhero or James Bond, because by the time you got to it, they either were killed off or they were too old and they were past their prime. And I hated that trend, that trope in movies. That bothered me so much, because it's like, all I want to do is see the guys in their prime, taking down bad guys, fighting supervillains, all of that stuff.
I want to recognize the character that I'm seeing on screen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was
that's one of the things I liked about the first one, is that in that first hour, he becomes Superman. Like, we see him in the costume, he saves Lois Lane. Then he does all these things to become the peak Superman. He saves Air Force One. He stops a jewel thief. He stops robbers getting away in a boat, and then he still has time to rescue a cat from a tree. That's him that is literally him becoming Superman in one night. Mm-hmm. And it's done very efficiently, very effectively. We get a follow-up with that, with the newspapers, like, he's been cited all over the country. He's done all these things. We need a name for this guy. You get the date scene, and then already we understand what the world is, that the world knows Superman. They like him. And when Lex Luthor does that little threat to Superman and he's flying down to the city, people are crowding around him because they just want to see their hero. And he has to say, stand back, whatever. And you get right into the plot. And like, this is now the moment where we are seeing Superman at his peak. And now he's being challenged by the greatest criminal mind of their time, having to stop two missiles going in opposite directions that could devastate North America. Like, that's why you do it. I mean, it's right there. That's your formula. You don't have to do it exactly beat for beat, but you got to get Superman. If he's debuting, you got to get him at that peak right before the climax, so that you get to challenge him against his adversary and put us on the edge of the seats to see if he'll pull it off or not.
Mm-hmm.
You don't think he should have let Hackensack, New Jersey, get destroyed off the face of the planet?
Exactly. I don't think that's what Snyder's version would do.
I hated that scene where he let his dad die. Come on, man. Like, it was more powerful that he couldn't save Jonathan Kent when he had the heart attack. But the fact that he's just like, no, Clark, stay there. That was the biggest...
The
that was
lesson...
like a slap in the face, almost.
Well, that's so against any lesson that Jonathan Kent would ever teach Clark. It's like, okay, you can save these people. Don't. What? No, the lesson is you can't always save everyone. Even with all of your abilities that are incredible, you're not God. You're not all powerful. You need to have humility in that understanding. There are some things that are just out of your control. However, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't always strive to save as many as you can.
Yeah, that bothered me so much, man. Folks, you can go back and hear our... I don't think we ever reviewed Man of Steel for the channel. We probably never will, because I don't plan on watching Man of Steel ever again.
Commentaries peppered throughout your history on YouTube.
Yeah. Go back
Definitely
and
on this show.
Yeah. But do you think Jor-El is going to play a big part, or do you think this should be more focused on less Krypton and just Earth? Like,
I don't need any Krypton in this first film, honestly. You can introduce that stuff later. You can start touching on that in the second or third movie. You don't need that to tell a Superman story. We already know he comes from there. We can address it later.
I mean, they've already James Gunn has already established that it'll be a few years into his career, not just as a journalist, but also as Superman. So we're not going to get a blatant origin in this movie. We might get a little nods here and there. I am crossing my fingers that both Ma and Pa Kent are still alive in this version, because
I think they need to be.
I think
I really
it's
think
great to have them as, like, yes, I totally understand that there's the idea that, yes, his father dies of a heart attack and he learns that he can't save everyone. There's also other ways to do that without killing off Pa Kent.
Well, there are plenty of continuities that Jonathan Kent lives to a really ripe old age.
Yep.
Well into Clark's career. I personally would like to see in this James Gunn DCU, I would like both of the Kents to be alive throughout basically the entirety of it, because I would love to have moments once we finally get to the point of doing the Justice League and we have some maybe potential Superman Batman World's Finest team ups. I would like to see a World's Finest film. I think that would be incredible if it's done well. You can have those funny moments where you actually have, and the comics have done this well, the animation has done this well, where you have Clark and Bruce as Clark and Bruce at the Kent farm sitting at dinner with Ma and Pa Kent, and there's great scenes that you can do with that you rob yourself of if you kill off one of them.
Exactly. And the other part too is I like the fact that you've got the parents there to give advice, because the things that make Superman is that he knows he doesn't have all the answers and he's just trying to do the right thing. And sometimes when the world pushes back, because again, nature is not in our favor, folks, it's trying to get rid of us. And we persevere because we don't want to go. I think that is something that could be done. It's great to see Clark be like, listen, sometimes I just don't know what to do. And Pa Kent can be there saying, you know what, if you don't know, just go with your feelings. What do you feel is right? How do you think that'll work and work out? And know that as long as your heart's in the right spot, things will work out as they should. If you want to go that philosophical or that faith-based way, I think that's fine to have, because there's nothing better than having a good father-son or mother-son or mother-child, father-child relationship. And one thing we've seen with James Gunn in his Guardians trilogy is he's addressed that. We felt for him and his mom, for Peter Quill and his mom in that first movie. We felt his disappointment when he meets his real dad and learns that Rondu is more of a father figure for him. And then the third film, it's the concept of family and the fact that, it's not always going to be what you want, but it's built together and it holds up. And I think that is something good. I would love to see that type of take applied to Superman in this regard, and keep him a guy who's like, I've got two solid parents back home that love me, that encourage me, that made my costume. It's not an alien, underwear stuff thing from Man of Steel, but Ma can't put it together. And it's something that he cherishes. And it's also a great dichotomy because for Lois Lane, in many interpretations, her parents are divorced, and her father's a general who's obsessed with, military and security, and her mom is wherever. And it's like, there's a good thing that there's something for Lois to value of Clark is like, so this guy is he's got it together. His parents are together. He's this kind of ideal. Would it be nice to have a family like that where I could have parents I could talk to? Like, that's something really great. And I know people like that. I know men my age and women my age who came from families that unfortunately just didn't work out wise. But when they see someone that is part of a family where their parents are still together or whatnot, they appreciate that. They're like, how did you make it work? And what advice do you have to share so that I don't repeat the mistakes of my parents or what have you? Like, that's good relationship stuff there. It's very human. Doesn't get explored enough.
Which is important, especially with a character like Superman, because the entire thing is his humanity. And it's because of Jonathan and Martha Kent that he has that humanity. And so keeping them around helps maintain that, I think, for a long time to come.
And that's what I want to see too. And you said the words long time. I want to see this, actually work for a long period of time. It'd be nice to get a franchise that can stretch itself out and not overstay its welcome. I wasn't tired of Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man. His story had a nice, logical conclusion. I was happy with it. But at the end of the day, I never got burnt out. I was always very happy with him. And I hope they can create that with Superman and this upcoming Batman. I hope they go across the board traditional casting. I don't want to see any modernized whatever crap. I hope they don't give you a good Superman and Lois Lane and everyone else is weird and out there. Same thing with Batman and his villains. You got to do this the right way to build, because these things are institutions. Fans, no matter what walk of life they come from, like these characters as is. That's why there's a whole community of people fed up with all the changes that Marvel makes. So hopefully DC gets away from that modern way of thinking, in quotations, because it's not thinking in my opinion, and just sticks with this across the board, because I believe that will be their greatest result, or they will receive their greatest result if they just stay away from any of that sort of reimagining, if you say.
100%.
Yep, I think that's good. My only concern is Tom King, and part of that room. I would like him gone.
I was definitely concerned when they were like, yeah, we're going to do a Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow inspired thing. And I'm like, really? You're going to take the worst Supergirl story told in the last decade and you're going to adapt that?
Yeah. Yeah, I know.
That character was as unrecognizable as Kara Zor-El as, unfortunately, the wasted casting of Henry Cavill as Clark and Superman was in Man of Steel. That's how bad it was.
Yeah, gotta get rid of him. Christina Hodgson, of course, because she wrote much of The Flash that is now performing terribly in theaters. Don't see it.
Can you believe how bad it's doing though?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I mean, unfortunately, yes, because it's again, it was built on a foundation full of sand. The reason that Warner Brothers couldn't cancel it or write it off, like they did with Batgirl, is it was pre-sold for international distribution. It also had deals made with cross-marketing platforms, and it also begun filming under Kevin Tsujihara. And if it hadn't begun filming, if those deals weren't made, the moment Ann Sarnoff got in, she would have killed it like she killed a whole bunch of other Warner Brothers films that were in early stages of development when she came in. But unfortunately, if she did that, she'd have to give all that money back, which means that you're losing that Warner Brothers has lost money, which would be against the fiduciary responsibility she has to the company and to the shareholders. And the reason Zaslav couldn't do that is because of the same thing. Now, because Batgirl was intended to be an in-house distributed film on Max, they were able to cancel it. And even though
they were able to write that as a sunk cost,
exactly,
they couldn't do the same thing with The Flash.
Exactly, because no one else was invested in it. No one else, other than the actors. But even then, they still got paid. That's the thing. There's no reason for them to
everybody still got their money for that project.
Exactly, everybody did. So the only thing that changed recently was that they were saying maybe we'll put it in theaters, but they hadn't made any deals yet. Zaslav killed it. Blue Beetle, on the other hand, things are going so well with that, because that again was supposed to be a Max only production, that they decided, you know what, this is actually good enough for us to put in theaters. So that's what they're going to do. And then they started making deals to get that happening. And and so we're going to get Blue Beetle in theaters in a few weeks or month or so. And
where
that
do you
is
think
why.
that's going to live or die?
I think it might be a surprise hit, but not financially successful. The stuff that I do know about the film is that the Mario Lopez character, George Lopez. I get them confused. They're both not very funny. George Lopez character is actually supposed to be an arrogant fool and idiot. So anything he does say is there for a joke, and it's not the studios telling us this is what Batman is or Superman is or anything.
Oh,
like
the whole Batman is a fascist line.
Yeah, no, an idiot's supposed to know that, or an idiot within DC is supposed to think that, because again, and I'll remind this to the audience out there because you are all smart people. The characters within the universe have no knowledge of what's going on with those characters compared to what we do. We know everything that's going on with these characters. We know the truth. The people inside Gotham City, I bet a lot of them think that Batman's a fascist because he beats up criminals and throws them, in jail without due process, or at least from what their perspective is. But they're wrong. We know they're wrong. And the moment that you or anyone else tries to think that perspective is correct means that they've kind of lost the pulse of what the character is. And like people in Batman's universe, they think he's crazy. He dresses up like a bat. He must be nutty. Well, no, he's a detective. He's wearing a disguise, not only to protect his identity, but to throw off his adversaries to give himself a physical and tactical advantage. It's like, that's not what a crazy person does. That's what a genius does. But you play into it. You have fun with it. It's because it's dramatic irony. It's ironic that the corrupt people in Gotham City fear and try to attack the idea of Batman, where we as an audience reading it's like, no, you're the bad guys. You're just desperate. You're terrified. You have no idea what you're talking about, and that's why you're going to lose. Same thing with like Superman. Not everybody is in Metropolis knows who Clark Kent is, nor have they ever seen a good up close image of Superman. So, and why would they ever connect the two being one and the same? Like that, you got to get inside their mindset just for a minute, because it's part of the suspension of disbelief and it's part of the fun. Is the fact that we as the audience can laugh and chuckle and know, like, yeah, we know the truth and you guys are in the dark. And that's where we get part of our entertainment from with these characters and stories like this.
Right. I think the marketing mistake, however, especially given the landscape of the industry for the last several years now, really, is putting a line like that in the trailer, because the trailer doesn't provide any of the context for that. And so, as we've seen, that becomes a major turnoff or a shouting talking point for a lot of people, which turns a lot of people off to it. And I think they would have been better off leaving that line out of the trailer, because then, if, as you say, his character is written a specific way to where that's supposed to be funny because he's meant to be an arrogant jackass and he's meant to be incorrect in that statement that he makes.
Yep.
That's something that when audiences go to see the movie, they'll have the context for it. And if it's written well, they'll hear that line and they'll laugh, as they rightfully should if it's done well. But when you put that in a trailer with zero context in this landscape, that's shooting yourself in the foot.
Yeah, because you know how they would have done that trailer in 2007, 2008? It would have opened up with George Lopez driving Jaime Reyes to school and talking about, like, you know what? Superman's not really an alien. He's a government-grown super soldier, and he's there to take over the world. And that's how you frame it, because it's like, they go, yeah, sure, uncle, whatever. And that's how you frame it. And then you just pepper it out. The Flash, he's really a robot. Superman, he's a fascist. Like that's how you would do it in the early days. You basically define, this is the character that doesn't know what he's talking about, and here's this kid that's now getting the super suit, and the only person he can rely on to help him is this guy who's a conspiracy theorist, all wrong with with the characters, and that would work. People would actually laugh, be excited and into this, because it's like, oh, we're gonna have this cool dichotomy here.
Yeah, and that would have been funny.
Yeah.
I keep forgetting that Blue Beetle is a thing. Just like, I'm used to the old school Ted Kord one, and
Me too.
That suit. I mean, McFarlane's releasing another figure. I know, folks, I'm always talking about merchandise because that's what I'm into. Believe me, that's where these properties live and die. The physical embodiment that I can take home, be it through books or movies or toys or things like that, it goes beyond a ticket or reading about it on the internet. But that being said, I guess it's going to resonate for an audience that's a lot younger, but I just, I hope that doesn't, like, two more flops in a row don't turn people off to things that could be different in the future. Like, that being said, I'm not here to show for Warner Brothers. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But realistically for me, I'm just kind of sitting these out until Superman reboots everything, because I don't think your average person knows when stuff reboots, when it gets changed. They're just kind of like paying roughly or some kind of close attention to it to some degree, but not like knowing the specifics like we do. And you know, that would suck if just these last two crappy ones, people are like, I'm done with DC forever, and they don't come to, you know, anything else in the future.
Well, a lot of people that probably are going to say that this year, if Superman Legacy is good and it hits and it does its theatrical run and it's popular and it's critically acclaimed, they will come around because again, they'll pique their curiosity. There are some people that might be stubborn enough, and I'll say that's probably an existing small percentage. But eventually, at the end of the day, if it's a really good film, it's gonna break through. Might not be in a couple of years, might be on their deathbed. Who knows? But usually that's the case because I do know people, especially at a teacher in my film school, who refused to see Superman the movie up until he became a professor because he loved the George Reeves show, and he didn't want to see it, and he didn't see it until like the early '90s, and then he's like, I missed out on all the fun, almost 20 years after it came out. Over that time, and he's like, yeah, it's a great movie, it's a great Superman. So
I remember the first time I saw that one, I had already seen Superman 3, and so I kind of had, like, I don't know, not ruined myself, but I kind of expected it to be paced a little differently. So my first sit through of that Superman movie, God, in the early 90s was, I wouldn't say I was bored or disappointed or anything, but I'm coming at it from either, you know, Batman 89 was already burned into my brain, and that's a much different pace for a film. Mm-hmm. Superman 3 is a comedy, but it still has those moments of, heaviness to them, to quote Back to the Future. But I can't call it an acquired taste, but it just took me a minute to get into Superman the movie. But now, it's one of those few movies, kind of like a Star Wars or where I will just sit down and, like, make an event out of it. Like, I'll pick an edit to watch. Maybe I'll make some popcorn. I'll clear the calendar to watch Superman. It's not one of those movies that I put on, I can come back to it later. I need the whole story, or else it just, I don't know, it just doesn't feel right. But, I hope that, like you said earlier in the conversation, I hope that this Superman movie is under, just at 2 hours. I don't need a 3-hour epic. I'm burnt out on long movies. And it's not the attention span thing. It's that they fill these movies with crap. It's not like they're giving us 3 hours of on the edge of your seat, drama and tension. It's just like, yeah, the first part's good, then it really devolves into nothing, and then the third act sucks because it's just a bunch of bad CGI. Like, I hope we're past the CGI issues by then.
Yeah, and a lot of these super long films as well tend to not be worth the runtime. I'm fine with sitting through a 3-hour film if it's a really good time, but most of them aren't. I've said this before. The Snyder Cut was 4 hours of me sitting here having a pine cone kicked up my ass backwards. All right? That's not a good time for me. But if you give me 3 hours of a film that's just a great time, well-paced from start to finish, shit, I'll sit here. I'll watch it from home. I'll go see it in the theaters if it's a good time. But I'll have a great time with it. That's fine. The problem is a lot of them are just paced so poorly and feel like they're bloated. Like, No Way Home, for instance, its first act, even its second act, are a slog. It feels like you're waiting the entire time to get to the end. At least that's how it was for me. I was like, okay, when are...
It's missing some urgency, that's for sure.
When is Andrew and Toby going to show up so I can actually give a damn about what's going on the screen here? Because right now I don't. And that's how I felt throughout the first 2 acts of that film. And that's not how I should feel for the first 2 acts of a film. I should be still invested in what's happening in the now while still looking forward to what's next, not waiting to get through what's in the now so I can get away from it.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer that you can do any good action drama thriller for between an hour 45 and an hour 55. And if you can't nail that, there's something wrong with your story.
Well said. I wish more studios would operate like that. Because you feel like, I don't know, when you see a good movie and you realize it wasn't 4 hours long, you're like, yeah, I would watch that again. Like, I saw Mario twice. I'd sit through shorter movies that I enjoy twice. I never saw Endgame a second time in theaters. Other people are like, I've seen it 6 times. I'm like, it's like 3 hours long. Like, that's
18
just too
hours
much.
of your life on the same movie, which, don't get me wrong, that's fine. But again, it also goes down to showings. If you've got a 3-hour movie, you've now just lost an extra hour potential for showing a 2-hour film each. Like, again, most plays in theaters are more profitable for people because if it's a good enough movie, they'll go back right out of the theater, buy another ticket, and go right back into the next showing. But if it's 3 hours or plus, they're going to be exhausted. Their legs might have fallen asleep, or they might have to, go to the washroom, or maybe they grabbed the movie before dinner and they're just starving now because they didn't realize it was 3 hours. People have other things to do. You want the respite and the entertainment and the exploration of that new world to be impactful and have some meaning within a reasonable amount of time.
I remember seeing The Hateful Eight, and that was super long, and I was like, I need to use the bathroom midway through, but I have this rule. If I just try to hold it for a movie because I'm like, all right, I paid to see this movie. I want to have the whole experience. And then the credits rolled, and I zipped right out of there. I couldn't imagine like every Marvel movie having that issue, or every superhero movie having that issue. You're right, though. People have these lives. People have other things they want to do. And hopefully Warner Brothers just does all of this right. I know we're being very optimistic tonight, folks, but you really can't rage out about all of this stuff when this is all you know.
Yeah.
When more stuff comes out, then you can have an opinion and be angry or happy. But as of now, this is what we got.
It's funny that you mentioned.
Go ahead, Andrew.
It's funny that you mentioned not getting up in the middle of a movie because you paid to see it. There is to this day one movie that I have gotten up in the middle of to take a piss.
What was that?
Last Jedi.
You shouldn't have gone back to the theater. You should have just
I
flushed
honestly
the toilet and
shouldn't
walked down
have.
the steps and
No,
left.
I got up and I was gone for whatever, a minute maybe. But I get back and I lean over to my lady at the time. I was like, what did I miss? All I missed was Rose Tico's little kamikaze maneuver. That's it.
That was
Well,
the
I say that what breaks or makes this movie is who they cast as Jimmy Olsen. If it's not a freckly faced redhead,
He needs to be a freaking dweeb.
yeah,
If he is not a dweeb, I would be immensely disappointed. That's supposed to be a big deal that Superman confides in this kid.
I say you get a Miles Morales type character as Jimmy Olsen. I know, I put that on the film. I'm sorry.
In terms of demeanor?
Well, just like some kind of like
or age wise.
age-wise, trying to be kind of cool, like all sorts of stuff like that. I don't.
Oh, I get
like,
you. Yeah.
I like the lame Jimmy Olsen, like in the first movie when he's like hanging off the dam and he's like essentially not crying but almost crying, and then Superman kind of picks him up. Like, I don't know. I hope they just stick across the board traditional.
Yeah, no, I hope so as well. Especially after what the CW did with not Jimmy Olsen, that could have honestly been more likely.
The 6'5" supermodel black guy that looks down on Superman because he's taller than him.
Yeah, I was like, what are you doing? This dude should be Jon Stewart, if anything, or John Henry Irons. Why the hell is he Jimmy Olsen? What are we doing here, people?
Greg Berlanti wanted some and was thirsty.
I was like, this dude, okay, this dude should be out fighting crime on his own. Why the hell is he at a freaking newspaper?
I think they made him fight crime on his
They
own.
did eventually at one point. Yeah, it was like, are you serious? Now you're just making the jokes for me.
Wasn't he a special forces officer in the Snyderverse? Like, doesn't he die in the opening of
Yeah,
BVS?
he was
Yeah, they
executed.
kill him. Yeah, they kill him right off the rip.
Yeah, that's
I
how
wasn't
much
asking-
Snyder loves the Superman stories and characters.
I mean, I
He's
didn't
willing
need
to
have
kill
his magical
Jimmy Olsen,
watch, but,
Superman's pal, within the first 10 minutes of his film.
Yeah.
Nothing is sacred.
Stupid.
We get it, Zach. We get it, buddy.
There wasn't enough sex, gore, and death for me to be into comic books. Oh, well, yeah, I picked up on that. I did, actually, all on my own. I didn't even need you saying that.
I mean, all of those things are wonderful. It just depends on the context of what you're working on, or what you're reading, or what you're making. Well, I'm glad we're past that era. Now, is there anything else you guys want to say about this, the casting announcement, the future, what could possibly be coming from this? I feel like I pretty much said everything I wanted to say in terms of like the hypotheticals and guessing where this is going to be. I'm looking forward to just something that's not going to suck, hopefully. It's a very roundabout way of saying I'm optimistic.
I mean, again, unlike Marvel, we actually have potential over here with DC now.
Yeah. There's a lot of almost infinite potential, honestly, with the characters that they've yet to tap into. They've yet to take advantage of any of these characters in terms of like what their true on-screen potential is. Batman peaked with Dark Knight, and I know that there were quite a few people that enjoyed the Batman. I thought it was a fine movie. It wasn't a great movie, and it also wasn't a great Batman movie, but it also wasn't the worst thing ever. I'd sooner rewatch that than I would watch Dark Knight Rises.
Yeah, me too. It had great atmosphere.
I thought that Pattinson was all right in the suit. He was fine. It was his Bruce Wayne that was really bad. His Bruce Wayne did not act like Bruce Wayne. That bothered me. He disrespected Alfred, and I wanted to slap the shit out of him.
That's the scene that pissed me off too, man.
I was like, you just said that to this man right now? Are you serious? Like the movie lost me there for a bit because I was like, come on, are you serious right now?
And they wasted Andy Serkis. He would have been a far better Penguin.
I agree.
And need a lot less makeup because really they just turned Colin Farrell into Richard Kind.
I thought Colin Farrell did a really good job. I also thought that Andy Serkis did a really good job as Alfred. However, and again, this is just a testament to the piss poor utilization of otherwise great castings. I liked Jeremy Irons quite a lot.
I was happy to see him in The Flash.
I also just love Jeremy Irons as an actor. Like he has this great presence about him. And he's somebody that I believe that if he looks Bruce Wayne in the eye and he says something to him, Bruce is going to listen. But I don't know. A lot of wasted castings.
So before we check in with the audience, guys, I just want to ask you, since we're only 2 days away from this, Indiana Jones, how bad is it flopping? I know we talked about it last week with WDW Pro, and it's just not getting any better. Like, we're coming off the toxic box office weekend where Flash flopped, Elemental flopped, The Blackening flopped, then Flash had a massive drop-off. You think people are going to stay out of theaters this weekend too?
Looks that way. I think they'll be lucky if they break 60 million for the weekend.
Let's put it this way.
It's a holiday weekend in Canada for us. It's Canada Day is on Saturday, so.
Oh wow. Okay.
What do you guys celebrate? Like, I'm not trying to be funny. Like, what is the?
It's just the birth of our country. You know.
Okay.
Yeah. Fair enough. All right. Let's put it this way. Indiana Jones and Barbie are tracking similarly in terms of their opening weekends, as far as like their low to high. And as it currently stands, I'm almost willing to, and I'm not a betting man, I'm almost willing to bet that Barbie makes more money.
I think it might.
Yeah. I think it'll be. I'm not like a Barbie fan at all because I'm me, but
I mean, I would go see Margot Robbie.
Yeah, so would I.
I wouldn't be caught dead going into that theater by my damn self. Like if my sister was like, "Hey, I want to go see this movie. You want to come?" I'd be like, "Yeah, all right, why not?"
I'm gonna take my mom to go see it.
There you go. There's a good excuse.
Well, the thing is, I got a lot of my collecting stuff from her because she collected Barbie dolls. Still does collect Barbie dolls. So I'm like, well, Mom, I'll take you to go see that movie. And so I'll probably see it by that way. But I'm not like anticipating it. But it probably won't be as tiresome as Indiana Jones 5.
It might be Warner Brothers' only hit until Dune 2.
Well, let me put it this way. Out of all the trailers for anything that they're putting out recently, that's the only one where it looks like the cast are having fun. Like it looks, at least based on the trailers that I've seen, I think there's only been one or two. It looks like just the people that are making it are pretty passionate about it. There was the one, what was her name? Kate McKinnon, is that her, that said something stupid? But it totally reads exactly how it was with the was it the writer and director for the Dungeons and Dragons movie where they made a stupid sideways comment about something that they were suggesting was a thing within the movie that basically yeah. And you watch the movie and I saw the movie and I'm like, there wasn't any of that. Like, so it's just a stupid, PR. I wouldn't even use snafu. You're trying to impress people that, largely get free tickets to your movie anyway because they're the access media. So honestly, that movie's probably just a ton of fun for its audience. Like for the people that want to see that movie, they're probably going to see that and have a ton of fun with it.
I will die laughing if Barbie outgrosses Indiana Jones.
At this point, I am actively rooting for Barbie to make more money than anything Lucasfilm has done in a little while.
It would be amazing if it made more money than Indiana Jones and The Flash combined.
Well, right now, considering how The Flash is tracking, that's not necessarily out of reach.
Out of reality, yes, I know.
Especially if we're talking on net. If we're talking actual take-home money, then yes, because I'm willing to bet that Barbie's budget was significantly lower than The Flash.
You're telling me that it doesn't take the same amount of money to make a Barbie movie as it did the Flash movie, man? With how many reboot or reshoots and how many years of production and all these other costs? Come on.
Almost 10 years, 3 reshoots that we know of, plus additional photography and pickups. Barbie's budget is being reported at $100 million, which I would say probably is close to accurate. So it really, if it pulls in...
So maybe 150, 160 after marketing.
So if it pulls in $400 million, that would be it's crossing into the profit area after marketing, P&A, and distribution.
Honestly, I think we're going to see it, guys. I think we're going to see that movie make more money than these other two films.
The trailers have been brilliant. Margot Robbie hasn't said anything dumb on the press junket.
Nope.
You don't have to worry about Kate McKinnon. I think she's only in it for 2 scenes. So
she's taken some really nice photos too.
There's that. Here's the other part too. They're making fun of Mattel in this film. And Mattel's allowing it, which means that they are confident that this movie's going to do well with crowds. If they're willing to be the butt of a joke, that's a good sign. So
it reminds me of the old 20th Century Fox days on The Simpsons.
Yeah,
they would always pull those 20th Century Fox jokes. Like, damn, that's good.
They'd never have any problem with making fun of their parent company.
Nowadays, can't make fun of a Disney project.
NBC leaned into that a lot with 30 Rock. They loved making fun of NBC, and NBC was perfectly happy with it. And I thought, it had a lot of hits. It's not everybody's taste of comedy, and I understand that, but I enjoyed it for what it was. I remember when I was pitching to CBC, they wanted a comedy to like 30 Rock, and I pitched them one. They said, you can't make fun of CBC. I'm like, well, that's what 30 Rock does. They make fun of NBC. Like, why can't I do the same thing here? They said, no, you can't do that.
That's lame. I think at this point that Margot Robbie's deserving of a massive smash hit as well. She's got a lot of talent as an actress. I remember seeing it's not just because she's pretty as hell. When I listen,
because look, I'm a man. I'll admit when I like an actress because she's good looking.
When
Margot Robbie is great looking, but
when I saw I Tanya was like, whoa.
Oh no, I, Tanya is probably the best performance she has given. However, people paid more attention to Allison Janney in that because she was the crazy eccentric mom.
Yeah.
And Allison Janney is the one that won an Oscar for that. Margot Robbie is a very beautiful woman, but as my friend and colleague Paul Chatto has pointed out, she doesn't really have the it factor or the magic jelly, because if she did, there'd never be a failure or a bomb or any contention with regards to any of the roles she's ever done. Birds of Prey still would have had a bigger opening because it would be Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn. Same thing with the Suicide Squad. Same thing with the other stuff in there. She's the only reason why I watched. She became famous because she's this affable blonde from Australia who had no problems taking a couple of shots of vodka, stripping naked for Martin Scorsese to be in a scene with Leonardo DiCaprio.
Right.
And that's how her career started. And she's been doing quite all right with that. She started her own production company looking for other things. I think she's a producer on Barbie as well. But she's never going to have the impact of some of the other talents. She's never going to have the impact of like a Glenn Close or a Meryl Streep. those are the types of people. Even gosh, why am I blanking on her name? But
Scarlett Johansson?
no, Scarlett Johansson. Scarlett Johansson just has sex appeal. However, she had to build to that because if you ever saw her in Ghost World, which is kind
I
of
did.
like
That's one of my favorite movies.
yeah, great
I love that
movie.
movie.
She does not look hot in that. I mean, she's pretty, but she does not look Scarlett Johansson hot. That came, as she started doing like a couple of Woody Allen comedies, and then getting into the more, physically fit roles. Every movie that she's done that hasn't been a Marvel movie has not really performed well, which would say that she doesn't really have the magic jelly, as it were. There haven't been many actresses over the last nearly 30 years that have been a huge box office draw the way that others have prior. Helen Mirren is another one. Helen Mirren, people used to flock to Helen Mirren.
Helen Mirren is such a phenomenal actress.
Yeah. Like people said that she's the reason Red actually made a little bit of money when it went to theaters, because like we get to see Helen Mirren kick ass.
She was fantastic in that.
I know. Yeah, and it's been a long time. And the thing is that the actors are out there. I know a bunch of them just got out of TV and film and went straight to Broadway, and because they just did not like the atmosphere in the industry, and I don't begrudge them for that. We'll have to wait and see what happens later with this next generation, because we are in a gap, not just with female movie stars. I want to point out
Movie stars
who's
in general.
an it factor on the male side of things that it draws a huge box office that isn't Tom Cruise.
Nobody.
Because people thought it was Bradley Cooper, but that proved not to be true.
No,
Yeah.
no, it's not Bradley Cooper. And there are some guys that like they'll have a little bit of a draw, but you're right. There's nobody that truly has that star power. That's
Chris
why
Pratt's films have not, outside of Guardians, and Mario, have not been.
None of them
The
have
War
been
of
like
Tomorrow
major
didn't do that
hits.
great.
I liked
Criminal
that
List
movie.
is fantastic, but it's still kind of under the radar, so Amazon hasn't messed with it yet.
Mhm.
But Mario, there's a better argument to say that Mario has a 40-year career and is one of the most popular video games ever to exist. That's what allowed it to hit that billion-dollar mark. Chris Pratt there is just kind of icing on the cake, so to speak.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. But yeah, nobody's the new Tom Cruise.
Exactly, and nobody's the new Will Smith either.
But somebody
Like,
needs
he
to.
was also peak.
People need to freaking sort their shit out because Tom Cruise is getting up there now.
And Will Smith is persona non grata.
It's funny. After the show, I'll let you guys in on a plan that I have for Tom Cruise. Hopefully, he'll bite when I get out to LA this winter.
Do you wonder? Last thing I'll bring up about this point. Do you think that has to do with like it's planned because everything today has been sold on branding.
Mm-hmm.
They think that the brands are what are going to sell, and audiences care about the product because brands can be tarnished. They can take a hit, and I think this branding idea has been detrimental to entertainment. Where I know it made money at one point, and I know it's on paper a certain thing, but if you have a brand that's just full of crap, that's all you have is crap.
Yeah. That's what we talked
yeah.
about earlier. Like DC's brand is damaged. You can damage a brand, no matter how big it is. Disney's brand is damaged. The MCU's brand is damaged. Star Wars brand is damaged.
That one's dead, buddy.
It's going to take a long time for it to rebuild. I mean, and that's the thing. It's some studios aren't going to want to put in the effort. Right now, Warner Brothers is. Mm-hmm. And I know there's some people out there citing the trades that Warner Brothers, they're in debt, $49 billion. That's pretty manageable compared to Disney's $100+ billion. They'll be fine. I'll just put it this way. They will be fine. If Barbie does well, they'll be good. If Dune does well, they'll be good. These movies here that are carryovers from the previous regime, they'll just have to get it out because right now they're expecting them not to perform to be huge, especially on the DC front of things. But they're also crossing their fingers that, okay, Dune, Barbie, what else do they have coming out this year? Might give them some good press and reputation to being the filmmaker's studio as they were back in the 90s, because they haven't really had that reputation for a very long time.
Well, right now they need to Warner needs to rebrand themselves as a studio that can kind of inject energy back in and revitalize these other intellectual properties and brands that they own, or just get energy out there in general, like you said with the Barbie film. this potential with DC, with the new DCEU reboot. They've got the Harry Potter Max series coming up here in the next few years. Like,
Yep.
if they can actually leverage those things properly. And also, yes, with Dune, I still haven't seen part 1. People keep telling me to. They said it was solid.
It is.
But,
It could be trimmed a few minutes here and there, but it is a very solid adaptation.
yeah, I do plan on watching it. I'd be going in as a Dune normie. I haven't read the books, despite my dad constantly telling me to do it.
Dad's a smart man.
my dad's a book guy. He's constantly reading like at least 3 books at once. But they can really do themselves a huge favor if they can like leverage these IPs that they have under their umbrella properly. That would be a huge comeback story if they can revitalize DC, if they can revitalize Harry Potter, if they can revitalize all these different things that they own. And I'm here for it. I'd love to see it.
I too would check it out. I'll be honest, I'm not into any of these things, but a good show, a good movie is a good show or a good movie, so I'm there for it. So guys, let's check in with the audience so we don't have to broadcast for 19 hours straight, even though the audience would like that. But thank you, Shrubbles08. Thank you, everyone, for your patience. We had a great conversation tonight. So if you want to send in some stuff, we'll be reading it right now as well. And we'll get through everything tonight. Don't worry. Shrubbles08 says, how Stella got her crabs again. Ooh, I'll take a ludicrous speed flash and another one, please. Sure. While we're getting your buttons queued up, yeah, I don't actually want to watch the movie How Stella Got Crabs. That's, no. That's
Seems
just
like
not
it'd be
my cup.
short.
Yeah. Well, there's 2. She met this guy, and, well, that's all she wrote. Boom.
Neither of them could afford the shampoo needed.
Nope. That was a sad story during this economic plight that's going on in the modern day. I think we just wrote a better plot than, that outline or that title deserves, but hey, that's what we do here.
There's a shortage of razors.
I mean, fuck, I'm not going to even try to keep pitching this one. We could go on all night with this one. Let's give you your buttons, though. First off, here's one we haven't played in a minute.
So have you ever done DMT?
So disturbing.
That's the Joe Rogan Show. It's not that disturbing, man. And finally, here's the one you asked for right here. It is Ludicrous Speed.
Ludicrous speed! Go! What have I done? My brains are going into my feet. What the hell was that? Spaceball 1. They've gone to plaid.
I don't know if I've ever said this before, Jeff, but watching Ezra Miller doing that stupid ass speed skating running form that he's got there makes me physically angry as a former varsity cross country and track runner.
As a guy who just knows how to move, I'm like, how does that even fucking work? Like,
It doesn't.
What is this?
He is ruining all of his momentum.
He's running like you'd expect Ezra Miller to run.
Oh.
There's that.
Art imitating life. TLJ Screwjob says, just wish Cavill could have been The Witcher plus Superman. And not to sound funny, but he's not either of those anymore. Where do you think Henry Cavill's career is going to go? I mean, he's a talented guy. I'm sure he'll rebound, but do you think he'll take on another big role, or he's just going to kind of do weird little stuff and enjoy his life?
I mean, he's doing the 40K thing next because he's a big 40K guy. I don't see that necessarily blowing up, but I know that the Warhammer 40K fan base knows that he's a hardcore fan of the stuff, so I'm sure that entire fan base will show up and show out for it.
Yeah, he's also got a spy movie by Matthew Vaughn called Argyle, which is supposed to be releasing on Apple Plus sometime this year. I'm hoping his fans will actually show up for that because And Henry has never led a film that isn't an existing IP that has been successful. And I think he deserves a win that is more about him than his abilities as an actor, as opposed to an established intellectual property.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would still like to see him as James Bond, though.
I would too. Come on, Barbara Broccoli and Michael G. Wilson. Only you have the power to make
it happen.
TLJ Screwjob, thank you. Zach Z says the Sisterhood of the Traveling Crabs. Well,
that could be a children's movie. A pair of crabs walking across from one end of the beach to the other, perfectly harmless.
Yeah, I'd watch that. So Georgian says, no Ocean Gate jokes, guys, in the chat. Don't want to sink that low. Also, early 25th anniversary to Hell in a Cell, King of the Ring 98. And he requests 2 buttons. Is that tomorrow? Is that, what is the actual date on that? Is that, June 28th. I guess I know what I'll be talking about on Good Morning Pop Culture for just a moment. I have to show the clip tomorrow, folks. It is the most gnarly wrestling moment in the history of the WWF. So, thank you, Sejorjan, for reminding me of that. I wasn't watching wrestling until 1999, so my dates don't really kick in till then. But that's a great match, and I can't deny that at all. So, you requested a John Goodman button, and so let's give you the John Goodman button first.
Son, this is what happens when you fuck a stranger in the ass!
Well,
hey, Big Lebowski turns 25 this year as well, so that's why Sejorjan wanted that. And here's my personal favorite button.
Damn
freaking hell.
Yeah, it's an out there one. Master Marlboro says some cash for the Pancake Fund. Good Morning Pop Culture for the win. Folks, thank you for joining me each and every day on Good Morning Pop Culture. We're on Tuesdays through Fridays, and the numbers keep going up. Like I said, the show will stick around as long as you guys are there to support it and watch it. So, Master Marlboros, thank you for the Pancake Fund. Every once in a while, folks, on the episodes of Good Morning Pop Culture, I get into talking about breakfast foods. And then last week, I even went out and had breakfast. It was delicious, like most breakfasts are. So hang out with me in the mornings on your way to work, at work. You can be working and lurking or, on the job itself, doing something. But there's always time for Good Morning Pop Culture. So that's live tomorrow at 9 a.m. to 10:30. We go live 90 minutes on that show. So join us, just hang out. We start off on this day in pop culture history, and then we roll into whatever you want to talk about. That was one of the fun things I had on Good Morning Pop Culture, folks. I've been talking about Wokebusters and my creative process, and everyone's been very positive and receptive, and they want to know more, a la Starship Troopers. So I've been sharing all kinds of stuff, talking about the writing process, the art process, the process in general, and what's coming next from me as an artist. So a lot of people out there have shown interest, and I'll keep giving you guys more looks at that, as well as the art itself. Xavier to God, thank you very much. He says, I always considered myself a rare exception for stuff because I was, as a 4-year-old in 2007, I remember 2007. Oh, I know, right? I could have told you Superman's origin because of Superman 78. I knew you were a lot younger, Xavier to God, than I am, but I didn't realize you were born in 2003.
And I have godchildren that are older than you.
No, but you are the anomaly. A lot of people today take pride in their ignorance. I don't know this, and it's cool not to know it. Being well-read, and I know we're just talking comic books here. We're not talking actual... Well, sometimes we're at a point where certain comic books are, real literature. But my point is, I'm glad that you know your shit, because so many people don't, and then they expect everything to be catered to them. Well, if I don't know it, nobody should, or nobody does. Well, buddy, they do. So, folks, be like Xavier to God and know your history. It's not really boring to know your Superman history. It's like fun stuff. I like fun. I don't know why other people don't.
I've got calluses on my feet older than him. Jesus.
I think it's time for you to retire, Grandpa.
I walked into that one.
On those old calluses. Modalicious says, Low T Superman makes that red, white, and blue thing from the 90s look awesome. I don't want Low T Superman. I would like... when you guys were talking about how to do Clark Kent, just give me the cartoon version where he wasn't Superman, but he also didn't take any shit. Like when Bruce Wayne was like giving him crap, he straight up was like giving it back. Even before he knew he was Batman.
Mm-hmm.
that Clark wasn't a pushover. Up next is Georgian, who says, "Just remember, we've never had a Jared Leto of Superman actors, unless you count Shaq as Steel, if we factor in the Death of Superman stuff." Hi, Mark.
No, I don't count that.
I don't.
Steel is something.
That's a whole other thing.
Yeah, Judd Nelson in there.
Wasn't somebody in a wheelchair in that movie?
Yes, a woman who I think would have made a good Barbara Gordon if they put her in a Batman film, because she had some talent there. But man, that was a movie. I will say that was a movie.
That was one of those ones I remember watching as a kid on tape and never watching again. Shaq is not a very good actor, and I'm sorry if anyone out there is surprised by that revelation that Shaq can't act. But he's a good basketball. He's famous for a reason. We'll put it like that. I don't really know his basketball skills either. But yeah. And so, Georgian, I think you're asking for the this Tommy Was So button. Since today's the anniversary of the room, we'll give it to you right now.
I did not hit her. It's not true. It's bullshit. I did not hit her. I did not. Oh, hi, Mark.
Better compositing effects than in The Flash.
Agreed. There are some shots where you don't realize they're in front of a green screen, but
Like that one.
yeah. Dude, I wish I could rewatch The Room for the first time. Like, the experience I had watching that was amazing. Up next, we have our friend Andrew Pitko, who says, "I want a Superman movie with Mr. Pitalik in it. Also, Shirley Walker had a great theme for Superman, the animated series."
Yeah.
I agree.
I just wish she were still alive today, because she died fairly young.
I knew she was dead, but I didn't realize she was fairly young.
Yeah, I think she was still in her 50s.
Yeah,
and
that's
she
not
was
old at
also one of the, I mean, you probably know this, she was one of the ones that helped Danny Elfman compose the original theme for the movie.
Actually, I didn't know that. I just thought that the cartoon borrowed from the movie, but I didn't realize that she had influence over that film score.
Yeah, she was. One of the volumes of the entire complete animated series soundtrack actually talks a little bit about that. But
We'll have to check that out. Thank you, Andrew. Marco Esquindolas, thank you very much. He says, "Don't they have to scrap everything to properly reboot / resurrect DCU? Can't have one holdover except Pattinson, maybe, as Batman."
Don't hold your breath on Pattinson coming back, or the Batman 2. Just put it that way. Production on the Penguin has paused because of the strike, and I don't think that's going to perform well enough on Max for them to pull the trigger on the Batman. And I would not be surprised if Matt Reeves has other stories he'd much rather do than work on that. Just saying, because that's not part of this DCU going forward.
Nope. No, it is not. And I'm fine with that. That can be a one and done Batman film. Now let's get back to actually focusing on some continuity.
The only anomaly we're going to be seeing is the sequel to Joker. So.
Was it part 2 of Follies or whatever, however it's pronounced?
It's supposedly a twisted musical of Harley Wynn's fall and romance with the Joker. We'll have to see. I was quite surprised with the initial one, because the concept was like, what's the point? But it did well, resonated with audiences, and I thought it was a pretty good take.
I liked the first Joker quite a bit. I saw it in theaters. It was much more memorable than The Rise of Skywalker.
It was a very good film about a very mentally ill person who snaps, but that wasn't the Joker.
Correct.
Modalicious says, "An always-on Superman is called Homelander." He's scary, too. He's the best villain on TV right now.
Yeah. Really good one.
I just wonder how they're going to play all this shit out, but, I can wait for The Boys. I do like that show.
I mean, I've read the comic book series in its entirety, and they've strayed quite away from it. So how they're going to pull this around, I'm curious.
I bought Herogasm years ago at the comic book store. They're like, "Hey, you want to read something really weird?" I'm like, "Of course I do. You know me." And it was too weird for me. I was like, "What the fuck is this?"
Even you had your limits.
Yes. Yeah, the all superhero orgy was weirder in the comic than it was in the show. Bada SSL says, it's awesome that we're just hanging out. We're all just geeking out over the possibilities of a new Superman movie. Just watched the making of 78 last night. Quite a coincidence.
DC released that on their channel a few days ago. Yeah. I think you could also see that on the one of the DVDs or Blu-rays of the original Superman film.
I have the 2001 release that has, I think, 2 edits of the film and maybe that documentary as well. I love that movie. And I love the production just as much as I enjoy the movie. I'm glad that Richard Donner was involved with a lot of the behind-the-scenes stuff, so we get his take and everyone's take. And it's hard to watch some of the Christopher Reeve footage when he's in the chair, but it's still cool to hear him talk about stuff after the movie as well.
And the director's commentary with him and Tom Mankiewicz is just chef's kiss. Excellent.
I have to check that out. I don't think I've ever listened to that. I always think of Tom Mankiewicz as a James Bond writer, since he worked on quite a few of those pictures, but
yep,
I keep forgetting he was on Superman as well.
He was also a ladies' man. He was dating one of Perry White's assistants in the movie.
Well, good for him. Good for old Tom there. Matt G, thank you very much. He says, despite liking them, it never made sense to make non-DCEU films. Someone said, let's build our shared universe by making films. They don't count. LOL. Well, they just want to make money. So, get in where you fit in type of thing, I guess. But, I don't really want to go into a diatribe about the Batman, but I would have rather had that energy and money put into Ben Affleck or something else that tied into what was there at the time. Adam Wofford, thank you very much for your generous super chat. He says, is one of the Authority members basically Superman-like? Also, the Authority is an evil Justice League? I would like to say that this new Superman uses his genius mind to fix problems. And then he has 2 button requests. Yes, Superman is smart. I always appreciate a hero that uses their brain more than just their brawn. So
yeah. And uses their powers in unique ways to solve a problem as opposed to just relying on the blunt force. Absolutely.
And to give you the buttons that you requested, let's give you this one.
Oh, no. Not again.
It's our second Spaceballs button. And also a number 66. Where's that at? Right here.
You're never gonna regret this, Ray.
My parents left me that house. I was born there.
You're not gonna lose the house. Everybody has 3 mortgages nowadays.
But at 19%, you didn't even bargain with the guy.
Ray, for your information, the interest rate alone for the first 5 years comes to $95,000.
Oh, man.
That's rough.
Yeah. That poor house. Well, at least Winston turned out rich, so I'm sure he helped him out in the long run. Shrubbles08 says, I would go nuts if they make the new Superman movie with the first villain of the Max Fleischer short, the Mad Scientist. I'll take the BJ, please. And I think by that he means the Buffalo Jeff button. Yeah, I would love to see the Fleischer Superman interpreted to the real life, or the real live action stuff. I love animated Superman. There's something just about the flow of that show. It's very exciting. And if you guys haven't seen on YouTube, they have fed some of the old shorts into a computer, and they upgraded it with AI. So, it's a 4K, and it looks pretty damn good. It looks better than the Warner Brothers releases. So, if anyone out there is a picture quality fiend like I am, you're going to enjoy it. And now for your button.
You found my secret button. Lucky you. Lucky me.
I don't feel lucky.
Why not, Andrew?
Why?
I should just call Mary on the phone.
Hello, Mary. It's been a long time. Your old pal Buffalo Jeff is back.
I'm sure she would adore
It also
that.
sounds a little bit like Saint Augustus St. Cloud from the Venture Brothers.
Well, after I do more comics, I'll have a second, or I guess a tertiary career as a voice actor. I'll just do creepy voices.
You'll probably be fairly successful.
That sounds fun. I would love that. It's like, what do you do, Jeff? Oh, I talk all day. Shrubbles08, thank you very much. Adam Wofford is up next, and he says, maybe in the second one, Lex Luthor starts off as friends, and by the third or fourth one, he becomes a villain without knowing who Superman is. Lex is friends with Clark. What do you guys think of that one?
I mean, I watched that for several years when I was watching Smallville, and you could make it work in a adult, grown up, Clark scenario, but I don't know. As long as they're not using Lex as the primary villain right off the rip. I'm fine.
Yeah. The other part too that I would actually that I would like to see is I would like it if Superman doesn't go to try and challenge Lex when he figures out that Lex is doing stuff, because I always thought that was kind of out of Superman's character for him to like fly up and be like, I'm watching you, I know you're bad. It's like you kind of like put yourself at a disadvantage there, Clark. It's like now Lex is like, oh, you're gonna challenge me, then now I'm gonna redouble my efforts. And it just feels like if you've got this billionaire industrialist who's orchestrating these plots against people in Metropolis for his own advantage, the last thing you want to do is let him know you're onto him. Like, it'd be funny if Superman's like, "Yep, I know what he's doing, but I'm not going to tell him, and I'm just going to stop his stuff and have him go nuts, trying to figure this out while I try to figure out a way to expose him for what he's doing to the people of the world."
I'd like to just see the John Byrne version of Lex Luthor. I know we got Gene Hackman, but like a much more extreme in today's society. I think a big evil businessman would be very interesting if done right, not preachy and overbearing, and not beating the audience over their head type of situation.
Check out Jonathan Shea's performance in the first season of Lois and Clark. You get a really good, charismatic but sinister Lex Luthor.
I remember that. I watched that show as a kid. I loved that show growing up. Dean Cain was my first Superman.
He has one of his love interests killed in the pilot, Lex Luthor, just so that he doesn't get implicated in the plot that he's doing. Like, that's dark and cold, but
that's a power move, man.
Yeah.
It's, when you got it like that, well, how else are you gonna do it? Darian217, thank you very much for your very generous super chat. Darian says, Caffeinated Wolf, as my partner in crime at my old job would say, you're asking for too much. DC needs a major turnaround to get to a 5-year and 10-year mark to build that Justice League versus Doomsday or Darkseid movie.
Isn't that exactly what I said?
I thought you said for 10 years, right?
I'm confused. Where's the disconnect? I'm pretty sure I was saying build up like 5 to 10 years for those bigger villains. Did I not? Was I tripping?
No, I think
I thought I had caffeine before the show.
To be honest, I don't even remember that far back. I don't have the memory of a goldfish, but it's also late here. No, but that being said, I will wait. I will happily wait. And Script Doctor, I liked your idea of, between movies you get a Lois and Clark mini-series on HBO or Max, excuse me. Like, I have the patience. If it's good, I will show up each and every time. On the flip side, like, I didn't put out a full review of Secret Invasion because I hated watching it last week, and I'm dreading watching it tomorrow. Like, I'm not supposed to dread watching TV shows. They're supposed to be fun and enjoyable. Came out. It ain't worth your damn time.
I'm still in the midst of writing articles about that on my Patreon, and I apologize to my patrons, but every time I start delving into its flaws, I come up with these really clever ideas for other television shows that I'm working on, and I go and write those down quickly, and I kind of get lost in the weeds there. I've written 2 original pilots in the last week and a half, based on how much I've hated Secret Invasion and Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 2.
I didn't even realize there was a new season of that out, and I have Paramount Plus.
Yeah, so
I had heard on another podcast that Paramount lost $1 billion from Paramount Plus last year, something along those lines.
Yes, they've merged with Showtime as of, I think, this week.
I just got the email about that. It's going up $1.99, but we're now going to give you Showtime content.
I mean, that's still kind of a savings, but only if you really like to watch Showtime. So
I'll go back and watch Dexter. I don't really watch my Paramount Plus subscription. Remember when it was a free demo or a free trial? I was like, I'll get a free trial, and then I forgot to cancel, and that's like 1.5 years.
Yeah, I mean, the sad news is that they actually had a peak on their streaming platform with not just 1923, but also with Star Trek Picard Season 3, because that was actually better written. It has its issues, but definitely better written than what we've gotten before and what we're getting now. So they also, I think, canceled Star Trek Prodigy, and they're just kind of running out their Star Trek stuff for the time being until they might renegotiate and get new creative team involved in the series, because it's a very reliable niche audience for quick cash if you do it right and you do it on budget. And frankly, one of the reasons why Paramount Plus is not succeeding is because they're going over budget and they have the wrong creative team on their Star Trek, which is a really good foundational franchise. It kept CBS and Paramount kind of afloat throughout the 90s. I mean, you had a decade of Star Trek shows that were all successful, all under budget, just licensed to print money for that studio, and they threw it away.
The only thing that they've given me on that platform that was worth a damn was Tulsa King. So
Tulsa King is also really good too. I like that a lot.
I'm ready for more of that show. I will stick around if they guarantee it's coming back like soon. I know the writer strike's going on, but if that was something that was coming back sooner than later, I'd stick around.
They've also got Lioness, which is also by Taylor Sheridan. So that pilot's coming out. That's got Zoe Saldana as the lead, as one of the leads, and there's also another one with Billy Bob Thornton called Landman, which is about selling drilling rights for oil in Texas and other southern states. Which also I read the pilot, which is pretty good. Those shows alone will keep Paramount doing quite well once they debut.
Well, I'm always looking forward to something good to watch.
Mm-hmm.
Xavier DeGod says, if the MCU truly dies, you think they'll kill the main MC universe off and we'll just follow a new universe with new actors in the different universe? I mean, they think everything's about the brand name, so sure, they'll do that, and they'll give you a new Iron Man, and a new this, and a new that. Like, maybe that's what they're going to do with Spider-Man already? I still don't like multiverse stuff. I still don't like how they could just jump around. Oh, we'll just get another actor to do it this way. Just, I don't know, do the traditional recasting, and if not, just new characters.
Exactly. I mean, yeah, the multiverse is just it's a thin veil to do a remake or a reboot without committing to it. That's how I look at it. It's just another reimagining technique for marketing at this point. And it also ruins the concept of time travel. I like time travel stories. You can do time travel stories well if they have consequences. Like, grab your character, throw them into the future for a story, and basically have them like get back to trying to avert the apocalypse that they see. That's a standard boilerplate story that can work if done carefully and correctly. And you can actually have meaning, especially if you can find a way for it to add to the character, if they're like maybe arrogant, or maybe if they're just too quick to quick knee-jerk reaction type of thing, and you want to teach them a lesson about like taking a breath before making a life-altering decision. That can be fairly used well to that advantage, and not screw around with people watching or reading. So yeah.
Thank you, Xavier DeGod. Jack White says, it's a Maoist thinking thanks to the Frankfurt School, Paulo Free, Herbert Marcuse. I don't know what we were talking about in terms of that. What was the Maoist thinking?
I couldn't even begin to tell you what the connection to that was.
Well, Maoist thinking is one of the threads of communism, and it's collectivism and state controlled. Replacing religion with the idea of the head of state as the god and all that stuff. I'm just covering the basics here. It's too late for me to try and remember Frankfurt School, Paulo Freire, Herbert Marcuse. But yeah, not great thinking to follow that tradition, in my opinion.
Dan Sifrar says, Blue Beetle reminds me of the Tick, only worse.
I mean, I'll never claim to be the biggest Blue Beetle fan in the world, and I'm not against Jaime Reyes being a thing. He's a different type of character from Ted Kord, but I just find it to be an odd choice to be kicking off their new DCU with.
I mean, they're not really. That's just really spin to try and get people to go see the movie. Like James Gunn has already confirmed a couple of times, not just with his announcement slate video, but also in other videos, other interviews or on Twitter, that Superman Legacy is the start of the DC universe. So
I don't think the Blue Beetle is going to even get people to talk about it. Hell, we might not even make any videos about it. Matt G asks, how would you handle a solo film after a team film? The issue of, okay, why doesn't this character just call their buddies for help? Why isn't it so-and-so here, etc.?
Oh, you know how you get around that? You make the story take place in a very tight time frame, like, say, 2 hours. Say Superman is, like kind of a Die Hard situation. Stuck in a building. He only has this moment to get out. All the other characters are too far away to make it there in time. That's one option. Not the one you have to go with, but just one option. The other one being is that, Superman calls out for Batman, and Batman's like, I'm in the middle of something here in Gotham. I can't come away, and you're Superman. You should be able to take care of it. That type of thing, and maybe vice versa.
Yeah, I like that. I guess because I've read so many other books, too, it's like, you take, there's just other stories that they don't really deal with that kind of stuff, so...
Well, there's a suspension of disbelief there that isn't necessarily an issue with doing solo films after having done a team film. I don't think anybody was really complaining about that in the MCU after the first Avengers movie. The issue, I think, is trying to kick off a universe with a team film too soon. Like when they did Justice League as the third film in the Snyderverse crap, it's like, okay, so we haven't had a Batman film. We haven't truly had a Superman film. We haven't had Aquaman. We haven't had Flash. Haven't had Wonder Woman yet. Like, you don't set up all of those characters coming together when you haven't even set up those characters.
Correct. I mean, they managed to pull it off with the animated universe, but they did it very carefully. I mean, one of the things that ruined Justice League is that the heroes formed the team before the threat actually really did anything. And I'm like, that's backwards. What you want is you want the threat and the urgency to happen actively, and you want the heroes to sort of cross over with each other as they're fighting the same enemy and realizing, hey, if we start, since we're doing this already, let's form this team to actually, put an end to this now. And then as a byproduct of that, they're like, hey, we did pretty good. Maybe we should, consider this as an ongoing thing. That's the organic way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't disagree at all. Our friend Dan again says Dredd was the best DCU movie out of all of them.
Dredd's an awesome movie.
That's actually a pretty underrated movie. If you're talking about the one with Carl Urban,
yeah,
but that was a good movie.
That's 2080. Once was a fantastic publication, not so much now, really, sadly.
I like to go back and read a lot of their classics. When I was younger, if a comic book was in black and white, I don't want to read that. Nowadays, if it's in black and white, it's probably going to be a lot better than, and I mean like not new stuff, but I mean like reading these classic black and white books, they have better ideas and better concepts. I love classic Judge Dredd. Yeah. Except Walter the Robot, that's a little weird for me.
I just like the fact that he hates robots, and I like the fact that it's basically a world you do not want to live in.
No. Mega City 1, no thank you. Go Big Boar, Go Home says, I just want a charismatic Superman. Jeff, may I have a grace button? P.S. Smith & Wesson can bite my rear end. You have to text me what's up, man, or you can tell me here on the show. I don't know what's up with Smith & Wesson. Do you guys?
Did they split up? I'm kidding.
After all these years.
I got nothing.
Folks, if you would like Big Boar ammunition content, subscribe to the Go Big Boar, Go Home channel. Our pal over there is an awesome guy. He's a lot of fun. He's got an awesome voice, too, and you'll learn stuff. I know people think, learning stuff isn't exciting. That's because you had boring teachers. But our pal Sean Firefart over there knows what's up. So here's your button you requested, buddy.
Grace!
Fantastic.
Jack White did send a follow-up. He says that last chat was in reference to what modern Marxist writers are doing with beloved franchises and characters. So there's some more context for you guys.
Okay. I mean, it's also bad too, because I have read some, not modern, but I've read some Marxist written work that's actually like the prose is good, the ideology just sucks. But they actually had some effort in there. What we're getting is really a lazy attempt at trying to do this, and it sucks just all over the place.
It's kind of ultimately kind of defeating when you're just surrounded by such shit entertainment. I know people think, yeah, go out and do other stuff. I get that, but you got to remember this stuff influences society, and it sucks when everyone around you is influenced by crap. It just brings everything down. But I will save that dour, depressing talk for another day, aka never, because on World Class Bullshitters, we try not to get into the dour and depressing and the sad. We may talk about a movie flopping left and right and take a little bit of pleasure when Lucasfilm gets their comeuppance, but overall, we like to keep things fun and positive here. And so, guys, I think we've had another awesome High Council. Last week's show was great. This week's show was great. I want to thank everyone in the chat for contributing to the show, making the show as wonderful as it is each and every week. Script Doctor, where can we find you on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter at ScriptDoctorPhD and on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/thescriptdoctor, or just Script Doctor now because it's got the hat thing. And I also have a Patreon at patreon.com/ScriptDoctor. So if you want cool articles and writing tips as well as reviews, you can come on over there. It's got a 7-day free trial for the base tier so you can see if it's something for you. Yeah, love to have your support and check it out, especially during the writer's strike. But got some really cool articles coming up over the next few weeks, so be sure to check out those when they drop.
And folks, you definitely want to join to hear the conversation Script and I had about Spider-Man. It was a lot of fun. I love to talk about superheroes. I love to talk about comic books, but it's very rare that I get to talk about them on an actual deeper academic level, not just about, oh, I love this because it was cool. Talking about the reasons why and why these stories work, because it all ties into the greater work of creating good narratives out there. And I don't mean the narratives like you talk about on the news. I mean like the narrative structure, the flow of story, those sorts of things. And that conversation, if I may say so myself, was very good. And that is going to be another reason to check it out. So not to pat myself on the back or anything because I'm a part of it. It was just an awesome conversation, and you guys will definitely enjoy it, and you'll like Spider-Man even more than you already probably do.
Oh yeah, we uncover something quite brilliant with regards to the flaws of all these spider derivatives. So check that out. You can see it on Patreon, part of the free trial. It is if you're a Patreon member, you already saw it early, but it's also on my YouTube channel as well. If you want to save some bucks, which I have no problem with anyone doing.
Andrew, where can we find you on the internet?
Well, you can find me over on Twitter. You can also find me on Twitch, where I stream games on the weekend. And right now, I am running around with my hair on fire with everything that's going on over at the Rippaverse. We just crossed $1.6 million for total sales earlier today. And we are like 1,500 total books sold away from unlocking our final cover D. Which I'm really hyped for people to take a look at. I've seen it. It's beautiful. People are going to want to get that for sure. But I am Eric's and the official Rippaverse social media manager and creative manager. So you can, if you're interacting with that account, it is moi, which is always funny when I piss somebody off on my personal account and they decide to tag the official Rippaverse account and say, hey, you guys need to check in on your social media manager and see what he's saying. I always chuckle inside because I'm like, you just tagged the account that I run.
Yeah, you're complaining about me to me.
Yeah.
I'll definitely fire myself. Thank you.
Actually, I will give myself a raise. Fuck them.
Nah, but that always makes me chuckle too when that happens to you, man. We've talked about that before off air, and I'm just like, great. We did have 2 more super chats roll in before we close out the show. Jack White says, and those parties I named are who you can thank for that Frankfurt school started back in the 30s by a bunch of German socialists. I'm going to have to read up on my history because I am not up on that era. I'm showing my, I guess, my inadequacies there.
Well, it's not often shared in most schools, sadly. I don't even think it's shared in schools today now anymore. But yeah, it's a very peculiar time.
And then finally, our friend TLJ Screwjob says, can I get a bone saw and a grace, please? Of course. I will give you the grace one first. Grace! Scrolled up to the top. But many years ago when I first saw Spider-Man, I thought, man, it would be cool if The Rock was the wrestler in Spider-Man. But as an adult, as a man, I'm glad it was no other than the Macho Man Randy Savage.
Oh, yeah.
Dude, as a wrestling fan, I'm just glad that they kept the origin of Spider-Man, because his real origin is he tries to become a pro wrestler first. And I still do love pro wrestling. Come on, LA Knight, you better fucking win Money of the Night this weekend. But yeah, I love wrestling. It's a part of entertainment that I don't talk about very often because people tend to look down on it, and at times I understand why you do. But when wrestling's good, nothing is better. Darian217, thank you very much for your super chat. He says, thoughts on a Superman versus Mr. Mitzi Pidlick opener as an icebreaker, intro to the new films?
You see, then you're dealing with different dimensional crap, and I don't want to deal with any of that. Honestly, keep it the hell away from it. Keep it more grounded.
Yeah, Mr. Mxyzptlk is not really, I would say, feature film level Superman conflict.
That works better in comic books and animation.
Comic books, animation, maybe
video games.
Maybe you could do like a 3-part miniseries of it, but again, you'd have to keep Mr. Mxyzptlk in our dimension, and he's just playing with our reality. The moment you try to take him out and put him back into the 5th dimension, and we spend too much time over there, it might be too much of a head spin for most audiences.
Now, I do agree with you guys, but I wouldn't mind some kind of an opener for a Superman movie. I don't necessarily need it to be like build, but we'll see how the structure of the film goes. I just want something that's going to be the most enjoyable and rewatchable.
You could do a running gag, like 3 moments where Mr. Mxyzptlk shows up, and then within seconds, Clark or Superman gets him to say his name backwards, and he disappears. And then Lois is like, "Hey, what was that?" It's like, just a bug. Bye.
I get behind that. Jack White also says, have you guys checked out the new trailer for the new Rurouni Kenshin anime? I have
not yet.
Nope.
I've been getting Wokebusters done. I told you guys last week I got 3 pages done. I've already got 2 pages done this week alone, and it's only Tuesday. I have found brand new inspiration because I listened to this X-Men audio drama, and if I didn't have Good Morning Pop Culture in the morning, what I'd do is go make another cup of tea, turn on my X-Men audio drama, and get to work on my next page because, folks, I'm feeling it. I've been promoting... I've been talking about the project, and once it's fully done, we'll be able to kick it into high gear and get those books out there. Stealing Soul was a big success. We want to make Wokebusters an even bigger success, and we can do that together because this is a book for everybody. It's the funniest book of 2023, and I know you're going to love it. So be on the lookout for more content about Wokebusters. I just want to get a little more done in the hopper because the pre-sales were great, and now it's time to take it to the next level. Jack White also says, thank you, Jack, that's what I say to you. He says, and did you see that Metal Gear Solid Collection has a release date on the PS5 and Xbox Series X? Dude, not only do I know it's got a release, I'm getting it for the Xbox. I love Metal Gear Solid. That is one of my favorite game franchises. I love the first one, the second one, except for the Raiden parts, and I've played through 4 and 5, but I've never played 3. I had it for PS2. A friend let me borrow it. I never played it. He never asked for it back, so it sits on a shelf over at my mom's old house. But I will finally play it, and I will tell you what I think of it. And we got some people. I'm building a team, folks, to make more WCBS content. And I'm going to have a guy that's going to help run the Twitch and the streaming element of the WCBS gaming channel. So it may not be me all the time, but you'll be able to get more content. And I'm working with the guys of the podcast to do more, as well as more back end stuff from other people. So like we keep telling you guys, we're building a better bullshitters. We're on our way to 200,000. Soon we'll be at 300, 1 million. Wherever you want us to be, we'll be there. So make sure you
bullshit better.
Yeah, we're building a better bullshitters, man. Jack White also said, Rurouni Kenshin starts airing next week, by the way. Now, is that on a streaming service, Jack? Because if it's on one, I might check that out or see if my buddy's got a login for me. But if it's on traditional cable or terrestrial TV, which I don't think it would be here where I live, I probably won't be able to check it out until the whole season drops. But I'm always in the mood to watch good quality content, anime included. I love good art. And so anime is part of that conversation. So again, folks, I want to thank everyone for joining us. This was another awesome night and another fun show. Thank you to Jack White. Thank you to everybody who supports the channel. Thank you to everyone who's here. And thanks to people like Matt G, who are always sharing the link. So, folks, if you want some extra content, you obviously can join our Patreon page. You can check us out over there. Join the membership for some extra stuff. But you can wear a shirt. You can go to Shop WCBS. You can get that. And you can get yourself ready for Wokebusters by going to WokebustersComic.com right now. I have been getting pages back from my inker, lining up stuff with the colorist. The pages are looking great, and I can't wait to share that with you. So, folks, thank you for watching. I'll be back next time in the morning, and we got a video dropping tomorrow afternoon as well. So until then, folks, be smart, be safe, be cool, but always be excellent to each other.